I am a scientist. You are a doctor, and your portion stands saving lives, not taking it.
Welcome to BBR Podcast.
Thank you. This is Paul here. First of its kind. It's going to be a solo episode today. Fred and Dan too lazy to get out of bed for this one. I don't see why.
Too lazy for Lipoma?
Yeah.
Lazy for Lipoma?
Yeah, I don't know why they're missing a huge opportunity here. But yeah, we have Max here, Dr. Max from Lipoma here. Yeah, how was your day? You know, thank you for coming on here. It's an honor, man.
Thanks for having me, man. You know, I don't do a lot of interviews or podcasts, but you know, I appreciate you guys a lot, and yeah, it's an opportunity to talk about the band, and you know, if people like the band, they get to hear more about me, and if people don't know the band, they get to know who I am, and you know, if they're interested. So I hope this is fun for them.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, for those who don't know, Lipoma is like well, let's say from my journey of how I discovered it. So I was ordering some stuff off Reality Fade maybe maybe 2.5 years ago, and I received some free stickers, and I saw the sick logo, Lipoma, and I was like, let me check this out, because the other ones that I got, you know, were bands that I knew already, like Defeated Sanity, and let's see what else is there. Yeah, just off the top of my head, like Defeated Sanity. So I was like, oh yeah, of course they're great. So then I went and checked out Lipoma, checked out the first album, and from Surgery of the Soul, I was like, oh shit, this is some really unique gore grind. It's almost like melodic death metal, and as I listened on, it's like, yeah, this is exactly up my alley of what I like to hear. It's you know, sort of for fans of like flaccid pancreas, deflowering brain, lymphatic phlegm, you know, mid-era carcass, and a band that we covered before, Horde of Worms. So that's a little intro of how I found the band and fell in love with it. And we were at some show to watch Divinely Vomit, and my buddy Dan, the co-host here, sees some guy in a Necromantia shirt and is like, hey, cool shirt. And then we find out that it's Max from Lipoma, and I'm like fangirling here. I'm like, what the hell?
Well, I was banned. I don't know, that word doesn't exist, but band girling doesn't exist. But I was like, wow, this is the first time here on the West Coast that I met someone who likes my band. So it was a special moment for me too.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, because you guys were located in New York initially, right? Or just you?
Yeah. So the band, I mean, the band is since July 2021. The band has been just me, solo project. I can talk a little bit about. You know, because you said you found me through Reality Fade, and that's also an interesting story, because I forget his name, but anyway, the Reality Fade guy, he reached out to me, you know, and I was a little surprised because, you know, when I went on his website, he mostly had brutal death metal bands and stuff like that, slam bands, and I didn't see. I mean, I saw some gore grind bands, you know, I saw, like, I guess maybe Last Days of Humanity was there, and you know. I mean, Torso Fuck is kind of a gore grind, brutal death metal band. So I saw these bands there. So I was like, oh wow, he wants to, you know. And I gotta say that him reaching out opened up my fan base immensely. You know, I had people, especially from Europe, finding out about who Lipoma is, and it was a great opportunity for me. You know, so I'm very grateful for that. And he makes some killer merch, and you know, it's funny that you said you like the logo, because that's also a story of its own. So when I started this band, you know, I wanted to make kind of jokey gore grind. What I mean jokey, like you know, I chose the name Lipoma because, and I've said the story before that Lipoma is not a very brutal name. You know, it's not like, you know, blasted pancreas. I guess is more brutal. You know, you know, it's not about death. It's not about you know, suffering. Like a lipoma is a you know, is a fatty lump that is non-cancerous. That, you know, you go to the surgeon or the dermatologist and they can excise it and you're totally fine. And I was like, you know, let me just name this band something that will just, you know, fuck with people or troll with people. And let me design a logo that is similar to the image of a lipoma, which is the fatty lump. And I remember I sat down on the toilet and I designed this logo myself. And you know, part of the troll aspect of it was, let's make a logo that you can read, because most of the logos out there you can't really read. So let's make a logo that is very funny. And I designed it, and then I sent it off to I forget his name now.
Rotting Head.
But this guy, yes, yeah, Rotting Head, yeah, right. And he designed it. He designed the logo, and you know, I told him, just make it look like a lipoma, like there's like fatty parts coming from it. And it's funny because to this day, many people see it and they think it's lipona because the N looks like an N. And people are like, oh, how, you know, they make fun of it. But I'm like, you know, this was a logo that doesn't take itself seriously. So, you know, it's a funny logo, and it's interesting how something that doesn't take itself seriously becomes, you know, iconic. People recognize it now. I haven't had people that have tattooed it yet. Many people have sent me messages that, oh, I want to get the lipoma tattoo. I'm like, you know, when you do it, you know, take a photo of it. But so far, no tattoos yet. So that's the story. And as you asked me before, yeah, I started this band in New York City, 2021, which was, you know, during the pandemic, and I had just, you know, my previous band was a crust band. We'd stopped playing because, you know, nobody wanted to play because everybody was scared and stuff like that. And it was the first time since I was 13 years old so I was, this was 4 years ago, so I was 32 then in 2021, that I didn't have a band. And I was very sad and depressed because I didn't have a way to play with people. And, you know, I was, in most of my other bands, I was the drummer. And, you know, I decided, let me just start a solo project or a one-man project. I'd never done this before. And I had a band before that was a one-man project. That was Bore Taint. And I can talk about that too. That was, you know, another funny band that was just like more about gore grind and then drinking and pork, you know, kind of the classic, you know, themes and gore grind a little bit. And so when I started Lipoma, I started recording stuff, and I sent it to a friend of mine who we used to jam with. And you know, he's a very kind man. And he said, you know, the songs are great, but they sound like shit. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, you know, like you gotta put some compression, you gotta put some this. I was like, what? Compression? What? EQ? Like I didn't know anything about that. And then I went down the rabbit hole, and this was during the pandemic, so, you know, I had a lot of time to do that, to start this band from scratch and learn all these techniques to take this raw sound and make it, you know, heavy and make it you know, brutal. So a lot of the early stuff is me experimenting with mixing. And, you know, the first EP, Excision of Monsters Teratoma, was me trying to create the most brutal sound and, you know, doing stuff that, you know, I don't even know what I was doing back then, but I was just I had like 3 guitar layers, 3 like amps. I use amp sims. I didn't use any because I didn't have any amps there back then. And, you know, it was early Lipoma, and still to this very day, is me trying to get like the mixing sound. So that's the one man aspect of it. It's not just like writing songs, but it's also trying to mix it and get it like set to sound like, you know, big and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was seeing in your guys' like additional notes, it's like you're always there credited like mixing and mastering with like the studio that you're with, you know,
which is my room, my bedroom.
Oh, that's your studio.
Yeah, what is it? Graveyard Studios? Because
I
live next to a graveyard. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's awesome, and, you know, speak more about the logo. Like, yeah, it is iconic. Like I you know, instantly was like grabbed by it, and I just wanted to check it out because there's a ton of gore grind bands that have some very obscure logos that it's like, what does that even say? I can't even check out the band. And then
Yeah.
but you know, would you want to go through like a little history of like of your releases? You mentioned the splits that you started off on not being so great production wise. Your friend said, and just kind of learning that process along the way, because from that beginning to where you're at now with the album, the latest one that's going to be coming out next Friday or this Friday, like, dude, that shit sounds so like beefy, and like it's like 10 times what Odes to Suffering was. It's really great, man. I love
Thank
it.
you for saying that, man, because the writing this record was a mind fuck, cause the early releases like Excision of Monsters, Teratoma, and also Horrors of Pathology, because I didn't know what I was doing. I was, I had the sound was very bassy, so I was cranking up the bass, I was cranking up the kick, and that just gave it that gore grind sound that you need to have if you're a gore grind band. You can't have a thin sound, and especially if you're, some people will hate this, but especially if your music is on Spotify, and for bad or for good or for bad, a lot of my fans listen to Lipoma on Spotify. And if you're listening to Last Days of Humanity, or I don't know, Hemorrhage, and then suddenly, or Metro Ragia, and then suddenly Lipoma comes on, or any band, and the sound is not as heavy, you're gonna skip it immediately. So you gotta compete with bands who have recorded in professional studios, who have maybe much better mixing engineers than what I am. So I was trying a lot to beef up the production. And then for the latest album, after 2 albums, I was like, and you heard the latest album, it's a little bit more musical than the first couple of releases. So I was trying to let the music breathe a little bit, but as I was trying to let the music breathe, the mix was getting thinner, and I had to go back to the days that I did know how to mix and bring that rawness to, so sometimes getting better at mixing doesn't necessarily mean that your record will sound better, and that's a big lesson for me, that don't become too good at something if you're trying to make gore grind. Still try to, still try to, and that's also, I guess, the punk roots, because I grew up listening to a lot of punk. It's the intensity of the music that people enjoy. It's not if they can hear the scale of the guitar, or how well the snare is mixed in. I mean, some people care about that, but I don't think a lot of people do care about that. They just want to put the headphones on and listen to it in their car and be like, "Fuck yeah, this sounds heavy."
Yeah, especially with like the 2 main camps of like gore grind. It's like real fun drinking music, or just really misanthropic, kind of doomer vibes, like Last Days.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the other side where it leans a little more into like what you see at like Obscene Upstream, where it's people wearing banana suits and kind of just going with the polka beats.
Oh, I love that stuff.
Yeah.
That's how I got into gore grind, by the way. I got into gore grind pretty late in my life. It was 2010, so I was in my 20s then or something. And I went to Obscene Extreme with my friends we were in a band back then in the Netherlands called Slap in the Honden, which means sleeping dogs. And they were trying to get me to listen to more gore grind. I was more into grindcore and like punk and crust, and they're like, yeah, you got to go to this festival. And then after I went there, I fell in love with the music, and I fell in love with the scene, because it's exactly what you said. I saw people there that everybody was having fun. Nobody was picking on each other. Nobody was an elitist. You had thrashers, death metal people, punks, metalheads, gore grinders, rave heads, and they were all there because they loved gore grind. So I loved that. And I was like, gore grind is a genre that is both brutal and it's funny, and it will it will allow you to do things that might be not that conventional, and people will still like it. I mean, if you try that in black metal or death metal, there's more of people will be more resistant to maybe outside influences. But I remember I was on Gore Grinder's channel a couple years ago, and I was like listening to a lot of bands from like the Netherlands and Portugal, and there were bands that were putting in like, you know, like metal, new metal riffs, and like they were rapping, and they were, you know, it was just, you know, the excess factor of jokingness and trolling, I think, is very cool in gore grind.
Yeah, it definitely made a leap from where it was in like the the late '90s, early 2000s to being more of like a internet sort of genre where I
Yeah,
think there's
right.
more. It's more welcome to experiment, and I think that's exactly what you did with adding this mellow death and black metal riffs into this
Hmm.
project, and that's like a really sort of prolific way of how you got into gore grind. You went to the basically the mecca of
The
it,
mecca, huh? Yeah, exactly.
and
Yeah.
do you feel like there's any other genres that you could do that in? Because it's more strict, like you said, with black metal, but like a lot of bands are kind of doing this like old school death metal, and it's like you just kind of sound like the bands that were before versus like trying to push the genre into new directions like this one you're doing here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think, you know, there's always going to be people, and again, I don't have a problem with these people. In fact, probably deep inside, I'm one of those people who don't want it to become too, um, what's the right word? Progressive or post. That's the word.
Oh
Post
yeah.
gore grind. You know, which I get. You know, a lot of like post black metal. I don't really like that much. You know, a lot of post death metal that, like, what was that new band, Tomb Mold, that released that like jazzy record? I enjoyed that record, but I also saw how people didn't like it. Um, so there's always going to be, you know, some people that are like, yeah, push it to the limit, and others be like, no, kind of keep it, you know, sheltered and isolated. And um, I don't know. I'm trying to think now. You know, if I was a fan, if I was not a member of if I was not Dr. Lipoma and I listened to Lipoma, maybe I wouldn't even like it. You know? I'd be like, this is too much. But so I get when people are like, yeah, you know, it has to sound like a toilet. It can be. You can't put melodic death metal riffs. You can't put. You know, some people say that's like metalcore riffs, or you can't put. Now I'm putting like classical music in it,
Yeah.
just to fuck with people even more. So I get how people would be like, yeah, this is too much. But other people like it, you know. And I guess the only, you know, Lipoma, I think, aside from the early EPs that are, I would say, are traditional gore grind, from Horrors of Pathology and later on, you know, the only gore grind element that kind of remains is the vocals and the drums a little bit, I would say, because it's so much blast beat. But the guitar work is not that gore grindy. It's more, as you said, melodic death metal. You know, I love At the Gates. I have a lot of influence from At the Gates, and I played a lot of crust. So there's a lot of like that crust punk, like tragedy kind of stuff. You know, Dysphere, deep beat stuff, and yeah. So you know, at the end of the day, it's music. You know, okay, we call it gore grind. Their pitch shifted vocals. I could never see myself singing. You know, I tried singing. I heard myself sing or growl or scream. I didn't like it. So I found my home in pitch shifted vocals. Some people listen to pitch shifted vocals and they think someone is puking in their ears or someone is farting in their ears. I hear pitch shift vocals and I hear like, you know, opera. You know, it's beautiful for me. I'd rather hear pitch shifted vocals the entire day than someone be like, you know, or like those high pitched heavy metal vocals. Listen to this band, this thrash metal band called Toxic, I think, with a K.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, after a while, the vocals just, I couldn't take it anymore. You know, as much as I love King Diamond and I love Merciful Fate, like Merciful Fate is one of my biggest influences, but unfortunately, the vocals after a few songs just I can't do it anymore. You know, Merciful Fate with pitch shifted vocals would be the best band in the world.
That's funny. And along with the vocals, the like you mentioned too, the drumming. There's some sort of there's like grinding parts in there, you know, where you're like holding the chords and it's just like blast beats going on. So like
Mm-hmm.
there's still some gore grind in there, and I think the whole aesthetic as well. And I was gonna get into like do your lyrics also like venture outside of like traditional gore grind, or are they very pathological and you know like normal gore grind lyrics would be?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't write any lyrics for any releases up to the latest full length, which is coming out on Friday. Maybe I was screaming some words that were pathological, but just words that sound good when you scream them. But a lot of people were like, "Oh, do you have lyrics? Do you have lyrics?" You know, and I decided to write lyrics for the last full length, not odes, no Cure for the Sick, and the lyrics are, I would say, they're not very gore grindy. They're more like kind of, I don't know. I don't know. Is it poetry? Is it? They're just kind of, I don't know. People should read them and find out. I don't know. I just wrote some lyrics. I wouldn't say that they're necessarily gore grind lyrics. It's a good question. The thing is that I'm not the right person to talk about lyrics because I never read the lyrics of my favorite bands. It's something that always skipped. I mean, I remembered maybe the choruses or some words, you know, like even bands like, like At the Gates that I really like, I don't remember the lyrics. For me, it's the melodies that are like the lyrics for me.
Yeah.
So when I wrote lyrics, it was just like to be honest, I wrote the lyrics because I was like, let's give some people what they wanted, because some people asked me like, hey, you're gonna write lyrics? So I don't know. And I can't imagine myself having to sing the lyrics because I will probably forget the lyrics or I'll change them as I'm singing them. So fuck lyrics.
Yeah, you just got the vocal patterns down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we got into how you got into gore grind, but the other, side of the coin is the melodeath side of Lipoma. So how'd you get into that sort of genre and playing in that style?
Yeah, so the Melodeath, was like a progression. So I grew up, when I was like 13, I discovered bands like, Ramones, Misfits, NoFX, Rancid, Lagwagon, Propaganda, Rich Kids on LSD, a lot of skate punk. I listened to a lot of skate punk, and also kind of like then and then I wanted like faster stuff, so I got into hardcore, like 80s hardcore, like Minor Threat and that kind of stuff, Black Flag, Dead Kennedys, I guess. And then I wanted faster, so I got into thrash metal, Slayer. And I remember I was listening to a podcast by the members of Propaganda, the punk band, and they start one of their podcasts with Slaughter of the Soul. And when I heard that, I was like, wow, that's such an amazing song. It's that song was thrashy, it was melodic, and it was I got into I was also listening to Death, the band, Chuck Schuldiner, and I liked how they combined thrashiness with melody. And then as I progressed in my listening, I started getting more into like black metal, because black metal is very melodic, and then I also started getting into grindcore, like Insect Warfare and Napalm Death and Extreme Noise Terror and that kind of stuff. So it all I always wanted to combine intensity with melody. That was like two threads in my music, and that's and as I said, At the Gates is a band that I could listen to Slaughter of the Soul every day and I won't get bored of it. It's such a great record. And now that I'm patient enough to sit down, and because I'm working on my guitar skills a little bit, because we're trying to get Lipoma live, although it's been a little bit difficult finding a drummer. But I've been practicing my guitar work, and I'm trying to learn like Slaughter of the Soul, and that stuff it's pretty hard. Even for like a intermediate guitarist. The galloping and the melody, it's hard to get it to sound really good. So that band always surprises me the older I get. So that's where the melodic death metal came in. And as I said, also a lot of black metal. Like bands like Gore and Necromantia from Greece, and early Rotting Christ, Varathron, those bands, and then a lot of Finnish black metal bands, and just in Dissection, kind of the bridge between death metal and black metal. The fact that they could squeeze in melodies, guitar melodies, harmonic minor, melodic minor, and my inspiration was, let's take this. So let's take what the melodic death metal and the black metal dudes do. Can we bring this into grindcore? And bands like Discordance Axis have done that, I guess, and
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe but not as much, not as in the theatrical way as like the black and death metal. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not the most I don't know that many bands in my life. I listen to a lot of just the classics, but that's something that I wanted to, because grindcore, I think to this day, even though I love black metal, I love death metal, I think grindcore has that intensity. Maybe because we talked about crust bands like Madame Germain and what's the other crust band, Ekaya. They bring in a little bit of that melodic death metal into the crust. They're not as grindy though, but they bring in that melody.
Yeah, so you're just trying to find like the perfect balance between those two, because I think we were talking about like neo crust that night, and I was mentioning a couple bands like Das Plague and stuff like that, and maybe even like Hungo and stuff like that, where they're very melodic, but they play in that real crusty way where it's a bit slower, more like more thoughtful rather than like intense, like how Discordance Axis is, because a lot of that melody that they play is coming from like just the riffs itself rather than like guitar leads, because it's only one guitar band there, whereas like these crust bands have someone doing a lead over certain riffs. So yeah, I think you bridge that gap perfectly, because I also love that that sort of like access point where melodic death metal or just melody in extreme music is like a ton of my favorite bands, like even Cataclysm, Cryptopsy does it too, more obscure ones like Pauline Spawn, like Athea Flame, like they bridge that gap perfectly of being melodic but like in such a brutal way where it's like you can't really find that anywhere else.
Yeah, and again, it's you always divide people, because the Gurgling Gore, the Ryan who released a couple of my albums, he made this meme that's on my page that has like it's the guy that's like sweating, and he has to press like one of the two buttons, and one button says like pitch shifted vocals sound good, and then the other button is like, oh, melodic riffs, like we got to choose one or the other. And I try to do both, and
why not both?
Some people don't like it. Well, yeah, why not both? Some people when they listen to gore grind or brutal death metal, they don't like melody. They like very dissonant stuff. I have a friend that hates melody, for example, but I don't know. Maybe it has to do with my upbringing, and I just, a lot of the instruments I played, melody was more important than other stuff.
Yeah. There's like places that I've went out and reached out to people and being like, hey, was there any melodic brutal death metal bands that you could recommend to me? And they just kind of laughed. They're like, oh, there's no melody in brutal death metal. What are you talking about? They're just like, I was like, okay, what's a Brutal Torso? What's a Pauline Spawn? What's, all these bigger bands that do have melody in the music. Like, it's, like you said, that there's just like the two types of people, but then there's the third, which is you and I, right?
Yeah. And not to get too like nerdy, but the next step for melody is harmony, right? It's combining melodies, and a lot of the Lipoma stuff is guitars that harmonize. So one guitar is playing a scale, and then the other guitar is playing a scale moved up a little bit, and then what Iron Maiden did, Merciful Fate, but in metal, but throughout music, and especially growing up listening to a lot of Greek music, and I've been listening to a lot of bluegrass now. The bluegrass guys, they harmonize a lot in their vocals, and it just sounds so good. It's and you can make it brutal. Like, it doesn't, just because something is melodic doesn't mean or has harmonies, doesn't take away the brutality. There was a band during the pandemic that I listened to so much, and I bought most of their merch because I was just obsessed with them. In Fairy, technical death metal band that re-released this one record called the Birth of an Era, and they re-recorded it, and that stuff, I love that record so much, because that's like, I think they're it's like necrophagist and dissection, but more at the gatesy. It sounded so good for me, and I'm nowhere near to what those guys could do with the guitars, because those guys are just fucking play sweet picks the harmonies. I will never stop playing music that is melodic. What can I do?
Yeah, and then the next step after that is like polyphony, where it's different melodic lines just intersecting with each other and harmonizing at points that's something we do in the band that I'm in, Galicia. Like the main guitarist Dan, he writes two separate melodic lines, and then when you hear it together, it's like, damn, I can't imagine listening to it without the other one there. It just makes it sound more full in a different way, rather than being so heavy. It's just more, I guess, dynamic in a way of songwriting.
Yeah, and the bass also contributes so much. I mean, I try to do that as much in Lipoma, that the bass follows one melody line. So with one guitar plays a melody, the other guitar plays another melody, and then the bass can either follow the first melody, but at times it can also follow the second melody, and even sometimes creates a third melody. So then you get into like three melodies, which make it very interesting. And this is kind of when you venture also into kind of classical music, because also heavy metal took most stuff from the blues historically, but also from classical music. And that was my attempt in No Cure for the Sick. And I'm by no means a very experienced classical music player. I played a lot of piano when I was young, but I'm nowhere near the really good players. But that was also a way to just bring in more different melody lines and just try to mix up the pot, and have the bass also fuck around, and try to keep it grindcore as much as and that's why the production was so difficult to get on this new record, because if you're having three different melodies, you have to, as a mixer, you have to make sure that those three melodies stand out. So you got to maybe dial down the intensity of the bass or the kick drum or the vocals. But then if you do that, maybe it's no longer grindcore. And some of the songs on No Cure for the Sick are not grindcore. They're like, one is like it's like a pagan black metal song, and the other is like even like a post-hardcore song. But yeah, we experiment. Who cares? We just try to see what turns out in the end.
I think from the couple times that I listened to it so far, maybe like 3 or 4 times, like it's definitely a complete piece. Like I can, like, from beginning to end, like I said when I emailed you, I was like, each song just like progressed even more and more, where it was just like more and more just captivating. And by the time I got to the last song, which I believe is the longest, it's like the most like the complete package right there. And going through that journey to get to that last song was like such a treat, because it's not only making the music like dense and heavy, but or in that way, like production wise, but every time you listen to it, there's something else to follow, which makes it dense in itself, and that's what I really like with the melodic music, is like you can listen to one melody the first time, and then you're a little bit more familiar with it the second time around, and you hear something that you didn't on the first trip, and it's like, oh damn, this music has much more to offer than what's at the surface.
Yeah, well, thanks for saying that, man. Thanks for the kind words, and that was exactly my point in making it. Every album I make, like the splits I make are more like I want you to have like 15 minutes of split material that's just you're gonna listen to it and it's gonna just hit you in the face, song after song, like bands like Last of Humanity, Putrefaction, Progress, if I forget the name now, and the what's the other one? Insect Warfare. That what's that record called? The one record they put out. It's just you can listen to the whole album just in one go, and it's just like one assault of music. And the melodic stuff is you try to paint that you can sit down and every song will offer you something different. It's not necessarily better than a record that just hits you in the face from start to finish, but it lets you kind of travel, and that's where the lyrics also come in a little bit, and So different listening experience. Different listening experience.
Yeah. So you're playing both sides there. So that's
Trying.
And while we're getting nerdy about all the melodic lines and stuff, I'm sure there's people out there that want to hear about some of the gear that you use to record this album. Your whole project actually. Guitars, amps, or preamps, and then also the drum programs too.
Yeah, I mean, I hope this excites people because it's not, excites me, but it's not very cool because the stuff I use is not very cool because, for a long time I didn't really have a lot of money and I didn't really have a lot of space too because I lived in a tiny apartment in Brooklyn, so I couldn't have amps, because I would fuck with the neighbors and so how can I say this the right way? I purchased online software the legal way, quote unquote, and I use a lot of amp sims. So for guitar, I've used a bunch in the past, but I think the best one I'm still using is Auto Audio 11, which you can find all sorts of ways, but if you go the legal route, it's $100, and that stuff is mostly for down-tuned guitars and very brutal guitar sounds that it's just really out the box. You don't really have to do that much. So I use that a lot, and then there's a simple EQ that I use. You just cut off the low frequencies, about 80 hertz, and then shave off the top around 8,000, and maybe boost the boost the upper mids and cut the mids to get that Swedish sound. And I've gone through three guitars. The early stuff was with a Jackson Dinky made in Japan with the EMG pickups, passive, and that is responsible for all the early stuff. For the Horrors of Pathology, Odes to Suffering, I used a Schecter guitar, a purple Schecter Explorer that is a special edition. Beautiful guitar, but simple guitar, nothing crazy. And then I bought a Vengeance Dean that I used on the new record with active pickups, the Fishman pickups. And now I'm using ESP, the MT, I don't know, the beautiful guitar that has, just like the Dean, Vengeance has Evertune bridge, Fishman pickups active, and I use that also. I use amp sims for that. But and then for drum programming, I went through many. I started with Tune Track Easy Drummer, the death metal edition. Before that I used Cult Drums, which is the cheap one. That was like $40. And then I used Easy Drums, Tune Track. Then I used Addictive Drums. Then I used Crim Drums, and finally I'm using Fotis Bernardo drums. So for those that are seeking all this stuff, this is what I use. I think the latest one, the Fotis Bernardo drums, is great. Sounds amazing. Pretty mix ready because I'm lazy and I don't want to mix the drums. And then for bass, I use Neural DSP Parallax, which is great. In fact, a lot of people that, like I follow people on YouTube that mix bands like Cattle Decapitation. I don't like Cattle Decapitation, by the way, at all, but maybe the early stuff. But I look at the producers and the mixers that mix that kind of stuff, and they use Neural DSP Parallax for the bass, which is insane. If you think about it. So that's all I use. And then for vocals, I just scream into a mic and pitch shift down, and then just add a lot of compression and reverb. And no, I don't add reverb. I add compression and just a lot of stuff. I don't remember, just to make the signal better. So that's that's the process of it. And now that I'm turning Lipoma into a live band, I bought a Marshall 4x12 cab, and I bought an amp that some people might raise an eyebrow. I bought an Orange solid state, 100 watts. And the reason I bought that is I know it's not the perfect sound for gore grind death metal, although it's perfect for other stuff I want to play, blues and stoner rock. But what I do is I plug in a metal zone in the effects loop, the back of the amp, and then I bypass the amp, so you don't hear the orange sound at all. You just hear the metal zone. And then I also have an EQ pedal that I use to tweak the sound, and you get an amazing sound from the metal zone if you dial it in correctly. And the Orange solid state, it's made in Korea. It's a very reliable, loud amp. So I bought that anticipating, playing live and touring and stuff like that. So we'll see. We'll see how that turns out.
Yeah, I mean, my second guitarist in my band,
Hmm.
Raph, he uses Orange Head too, and he even has a cab, and it sounds great. Like you can really hear like the impact that it has, and it cuts through my other
Yeah.
guitarist amp, which is like a Randall and a Jackson cab.
Oh,
So it's
nice.
like it has a distinct sound to it too. I'm not
It
sure if
does,
he's
yeah.
bypassing or anything. I know he has
Mm.
pedals, but I don't know where he's running it from. But yeah, I enjoy hearing that sound too. Um,
One thing I'm going to say, which is also very nerdy, is that everybody scoops their mids in gore grind and brutal death metal, and I get why, because it makes your guitar sound meaner. But I found out that if you scoop the mids, you can't really hear the nuances of some guitar work that I really wanted to shine in Lipoma. So whoa, sorry, I heard some weird
no,
sounds
you're
there.
good.
Uh, so I never really scooped the mids a lot because I found that if you scoop the mids in the mix, the guitars kind of fall back, and then you gotta amp them up, and I don't know, it's just so you don't have to follow what everybody else does, and at the end of the day, it's what you like hearing, and if someone doesn't like it, they won't listen to it. Like the same way there's some bands that I listen to and I just don't like the production and I don't listen to it, so you know.
Yeah, there's plenty of other bands that will scoop the mids that you can listen to, and if it's not your
Mhm.
cup of tea, then spit it out.
Right, exactly.
And getting away from some of the more technical talk, we could talk about
Mhm.
some of the artwork that you have, especially
Mhm.
from a lot of the splits. Like it's very like just like traditional sort of gore grind. And then once you turn on the music, it kind of like subverts you. It's like, oh, what is my expectations are completely flipped. Like, is that uh, like
Yeah.
a planned action from you?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, how am I going to answer this? So, it also depends on the split. Like, so the first split, as the first release, Excision of Monsters Teratoma, that just looks gory, and the sounds are gory, and then, or like the Pig Bulls split, that looks nasty, and the music is nasty. Um, but I've had feedback from people who are like, oh man, if only his record covers were more normal, I would enjoy the music more. So I guess that's maybe a way to just keep the music to a very specific group of people. Maybe in the current record, I made a more mild cover, because the No Cure for the Sick cover it won't shock you. Maybe it will shock you a little bit, but it won't shock you as much as like Horrors of Pathology, which I think does shock someone. Although it doesn't show any blood or anything, but it's the intensity of the disease that this poor guy in China is suffering from. I don't think you can buy a CD for a kid and have that on the cover. Like his parents will be like, oh, And I've had also a lot of messages from some parents, because it's funny, because a lot of people that listen to Lipoma are pretty young kids, and they're
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, my parents won't let me wear the shirt to school, and I'm like, oh, maybe you shouldn't wear the shirt to school. But look, the artwork was a way for me to look. I didn't want to commission anybody. I tried that for some stuff, and I ended up spending a lot of money, and I didn't like it. So I decided to DIY. Everything I do myself. So I found pictures and images online that are not as gory as other bands use, and I did that because it's a statement. You don't have to show guts and gore and cut off limbs to make a statement. Like Horrors of Pathology, as much as it shocks some people, it's a very mild image, but it fucks with you on like a deeper level. And the same with Odes to Suffering. Like you see someone that has clearly like a bad skin condition, and it's just it's I think the notion of like suffering and pain is more than the notion of shock, like the existential part. So that's another thing. And then the third thing about these covers is that I forgot what the third thing was. I think it's the the domain thing. Like you don't want to use something that is like you will get into trouble or something. So I use stuff that's just very obscure
Yeah.
and very like simple stuff. Simple stuff.
Yeah, and like what you said about it shocking you in like a different way. It's like when you see these like gory images, they're usually of like dead people, but the first two albums or I can even, mention the third one in there. It's like these people are alive like living with that shit, so it's like a
Right.
completely different feeling there.
Exactly. I don't think I've used any images of dead people in all my releases.
Yeah, it's like these guys are,
Yeah.
suffering and, living through it, trying to get the treatment or going through the surgeries to fix those, uh, illnesses or conditions that they have. And it's like, damn, you could see it in the process rather than like sympathizing with something that's already dead. Because most of the time
Right.
people will sympathize more with like, oh, they were killed rather than like the actual like
Hmm.
corpse itself.
Yeah.
So
And that's the third thing that I forgot I wanted to say, which is that I've chosen a lot of records, especially for the full lengths, uh, photos or images or paintings, where it's like you're in the operating room. So like bands like Glasses of Humanity or Lymphatic Phlegm, they use like close-ups of like an organ or something, which is great. And I could have gone that route, and I tried that. Well, no, the first one, but I was more inspired by that, and then I forgot the name of the record because I'm a poser. The Dead Infection record. I don't remember the name of the record, but it's a photo of an operating room, and I was like, wow, that doesn't show any guts, anything, but you're in the operating room, and that's the, it's like. I don't know. I don't want to get too artsy fartsy, but it's like when you see a really good painting, like a Van Gogh painting, and you're out there in the field, like in the starry night. You're in the field. You're watching the stars. The same thing with that Dead Infection. You're in the operating room, and even though you're not seeing what is happening, you've been teleported there. And that was what I wanted to do for Horrors of Pathology and Odes of Suffering. Like you are there by the bed, staring at this person. You're not, fixated on some little cut or an organ or like some poor fellow whose brains are splattered all over the asphalt or something. You're in the operating room and you're part of that surgery, and it's just a different experience visually.
yeah, and now that you mention it, it got me thinking like you're giving like a different point of view of this, like from your moniker being Doctor, Lipoma. It's like you're seeing that these people with these conditions and stuff like that, like you're getting more of that perspective than
Mm-hmm.
like a crime or something. Like you're coming in after the fact. It's like you're trying to get this issue
Yeah.
resolved. It's giving it a different point of view,
Yeah.
almost like I'm sure you like or heard of Impaled, right? So like they take all
Mm-hmm.
those doctor monikers too, and they have the
Also big
song.
in. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, they also have the song like Operating Theater and all that. So like they I think they kind of take that route too.
Huge influence on me, Impaled, because of their imagery, but also their music.
Yeah,
Huge
very
influence.
melodic. It's so
Yeah.
good. That was
And we haven't spoken at all. I can't believe it. We haven't spoken at all about Carcass, which is a band that I get compared to all the time. And I love Carcass. I listen to a lot of Carcass, and I think it's interesting because I did not really try to copy Carcass, but inevitably you end up sounding like Carcass because that band is such a pioneer in everything they do. Like, Carcass, you know, is the biggest, the best. They started the fucking genre. So inevitably you're gonna be like Carcass, whether you like it
yeah,
or not.
and in another way too, like how you're sort of going into different directions with the music, like Carcass did throughout their discography. Like they started off, pioneering gore grind, and then they brought in melodic death metal and even more, I guess, more rock and roll based stuff with like swan
Yeah.
songs. And you could say the same thing with Zizma from Finland. They started off very
Yeah.
gore grind, and then they went and like pretty much birthed death and roll, which is one of my favorite genres too. So it's like
It's great.
I like seeing that progression uh, through a band's discography, and that's sort of why I like how many releases that you have because it shows a story. with it. And we'll get into that later, with how the sound's evolving and all that. But
Mm-hmm.
let's see.
You know,
So,
it's funny that you said how do you said the name from Finland? Because
oh,
you know,
Zizma.
yeah, because for me, I'm from Greece, so I see the X and I said Hisma, but I guess it's Zizma.
Oh
Is how you
no,
pronounce it?
I'm an ignorant American here, so I don't know.
Well, you might be right because sometimes what was the other band? Impetigo. Like I would always say Impetigo,
Oh
but
yeah,
that's just
Impetigo.
my yeah, that's just my fresh off the boat accent.
Yeah, and they're also one of the pioneers of gore
Pioneers,
grind
man. Oh,
too.
that and the vocals. I mean, that guy's vocals, without any effects, puts people like me to shame that have to rely on the pitch shift. But I mean, that guy's. I mean, talk about an artist. Like that is an artist.
Yeah, and I see gore grind in two different ways. It's like you do go into either like the carcass bands, like you got pharmacists and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
and then you get like the Impetigo kind of route, which is not it's less taken. Like I don't hear a lot of bands going in that route. But if you hear songs like Disorganized and stuff, like all the components of gore grind are there, and
Mm-hmm.
it's I guess a more varied sound that I hear from there rather than kind of grinding out some riffs,
Yeah.
like the early Carcass and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
And
Definitely.
let's see, what other types of music do you take influence from? Like in this new record, you said that it's like very classical influence. I hear, I think it was like 4 songs that have those keys in there. I'm not sure what the voicing is, but it sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Like just it sounds like medieval in a way. Like, and I think that might be the artwork also influencing that. But like when I look at the artwork and hear that music, it's like it translates perfectly. So like, is there any sort of other music that besides like gore grind and that is influencing you now?
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. So, in Horrors of Pathology, I forget which song now, but there's one song where I take like fuck, I'm forgetting my own influences now. Where there's just a small riff that's like 10 seconds long. Da 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 da, which is I think it's Brahms. I don't know. It's like a classical, and I just threw that in there. And some people picked it up. I remember that like on Gore Grinder's YouTube channel, someone commented on it like Home is a man of culture. He threw in some classical music, and I grew up playing a lot of classical music. I'll say unfortunately. Well, unfortunately, my parents forced me to learn piano and play classical music, which I hated for a very long time because I had to take lessons and I didn't like the drills and I didn't like the fact that you had to learn something from the tabs, from the sheet music.
Yeah.
And then when I got older, I kind of rediscovered classical music, and it's beautiful music. And a lot of stuff on the new record are like the opening song, "The Sea Surgeon," is basically a Bach song. It's a fugue, um, which is very hard to play also. And there are also more Bach songs on the Last Anatomy of Johann Ziegler. That's basically a fugue from start to finish. And there's some Beethoven in there, and there's some Schumann at the end. So these are just classical music songs that I always enjoyed, and I was like, let's just put it in there. And how do you? And in my mind, I was like, okay, how can you put classical music into a gore grind song, into a pathological gore grind band that deals with disease? And I was like, you know what? Let's put that medieval imagery of like surgery and like maybe some witchcraft or maybe some what is it, Quakery they call it, like pseudoscience, pseudomedicine,
Hmm.
and just create like a world of like it's still gore grind because the imagery is still about disease and suffering and stuff like that. Maybe some black metal in there, so it's just like it's a collage of different stuff, and so that's a big influence on there. And there's also some other influences sprinkled for some songs like Cardiac Scars Forever and What's the other one called? Psalms of Psoriasis. Um, that could be like a punk rock or a post-hardcore song, because I listen to a lot of that stuff too. Like I like the bands like Shai Hulud, for example. Like, are they post-hardcore? Maybe they're hardcore, but just kind of when hardcore kids started also making more melodic hardcore. Like obviously you have bands like Hatebreed and Terror, and American Nightmare, great bands, and then you have bands like Shai Hulud, and I'm forgetting now. I guess Shai Hulud is like probably my favorite, or like melodic hardcore bands where they weren't scared to put melody in the hardcore, and they said, I'd rather have these kind of post-hardcore skate punk riffs over the breakdowns, and there's a little bit sprinkled in there. There were some influences from like Remedies of Pagan Medicine. That stuff is like that's like a pagan black metal song. It's like almost like heavy metal.
The keys on there definitely like
right?
that like once I looked at the track I was listening to, I was like, oh, that makes perfect sense.
Just I think this guy reviewed it, and he called it like a circus. He didn't really like it, but he was kind enough to not bash it completely. But I get why he would say it's a circus, because if someone expects something and they're like, hey, wait a minute, this is X, this is Y, but that was my intent, just to, and I'll be completely honest. I was gonna stop Lipoma, and because of various reasons, and I was like, okay, if I stop Lipoma, I still gotta write this record, and let's just make it very ridiculous and just go out with a bang and just throw in the influences that I never had the chance to. And the other thing is that maybe I could have started more bands aside from Lipoma and explored these influences there, but I because I have such bad ADHD, I decided I'm going to just stick with Lipoma, and I'm just going to change music through Lipoma instead of starting like 5 and 6 and 7 side projects. And I wrote that one song, Pathology for Life, which is basically like a pop punk, skate punk song. And some people loved it, some people hated it, but I had to write that song. I wanted to write I moved to California last year, which was I always wanted to move to California since I was like a young kid, and I was like skateboarding, and I had like I always thought of California as like the mecca for skateboarding and punk rock. And I was like, now that I moved here, I was like driving around listening to Rich Kids on LSD and Lagwagon, and going to surf. I was like, I gotta write a fucking skate punk song, fuck it, and let's put pitch shifted vocals on it. So I would say that the influences on this new record are just more, you grow older, and life, it's just life, you just put in stuff from your life. And there are also some songs in there that were maybe our listeners won't know this unless they're from Greece, but like Cult of the Fire Healers, the first riff from that song is from a Greek song called O Mavros Thermastis, the Black Seaman or something. I don't know how to translate it, which is a song about this is a long story, but it's a song about this guy who works in a ship that travels around the world, and his mate is like this huge tall guy from Africa who's like addicted to heroin, and it's a song about like how all these seamen get like hallucinations from like traveling at sea. I don't know. Listen to this. It has a very haunting melody, and I stole that melody and put it in the song and made a metal song out of it. And this is a song that I used to listen to when I was young. Like my dad would sing me the song when I was young and before going to bed or something on his guitar. So these are just songs that you have listened to in the past. They're in your subconscious, and you end up just putting in your art. And fuck it, who cares?
No, it's definitely such a great song. Like when you put that out, I was like, I think it was maybe a couple days or a couple weeks after we first met, and then I heard that song, and I was like, damn, this is I didn't know that this guy can outdo himself even more with this. Like
yeah.
And
that's like a melodic death metal song, right?
Yeah.
And there, in the break, there is this. I put a sample from Dune, the original Dune, not the remake. I like the remake, but the original I think is much more powerful because it doesn't have all that, what is it, CGI they call it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that sample is from Dune, but it's also a sample from the beginning of, I think, Misanthropy Pure, which is a Shai Hulud album. Heat upon heat upon heat. And so that's, I don't know, if people like Shai Hulud, they'll definitely see the connection there.
Yeah, and there's this other podcast called Terminus Extreme Metal Podcast, and we have like a little Discord group, and like it was funny, I just see them post the song in there, the I'll call it the Gore pop song, and when everyone like loves it, and I asked, I was like, hey, is there any questions you want me to ask? Max, I'm gonna interview him, and they're like, can we get a full album of that sound? Because they love it. Like we all love that.
I initially had that song in the full length, but I took it out because I took out 3 songs from the full length, unfortunately, that were really good songs. I mean, if you think Pathology for Life is a good song, because of the vinyl had, I didn't know that the vinyl had a limit. You couldn't make more than 40 minutes of music, I think, on the vinyl, because of, which I didn't know. And then at the end, the guy's like, yeah, dude, you have to cut out like 8 minutes of your music. And he was like, and I was like, oh shit. And he was like, well, don't worry. You'll take it out from the vinyl, but we can still have it on cassette and CD. And I said, no, man, I can't do that. I can't have like a vinyl and then a CD and a digital of a different version. Like the vinyl, people will feel very disrespected. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna take all those songs off. And I'm sitting on I'm sitting on 2 songs because the Pathology for Life I just released as a single. And those other 2 songs I might release on a split with someone else. Maybe Haggis, because they've been interested in releasing something with me, with us. So that'll come out maybe on 7-inch. We'll see.
Nice. Yeah, so we're all really enjoy that sound because there's certain bands like Thorn of Vernington and Rosterchester, more black metal oriented, but they have a lot of that like sort of pop punk sound in their music. And once we heard it in the Gore grind, we're like, oh shit, this is candy.
For someone, look, I got a lot of rage emails from kids, which I totally get. If I was 16 or 18 years old, and one of my bands that I listened to, like if I don't know. I mean, my favorite band back in the day was NoFX, and they have jazz and Champs-Élysées song, and they fucked around a lot. But if you listen to more serious music, you're like, oh, they can't handle that. But if you're a little bit older like me, and you've been through punk rock as a kid and pop punk, and you get a little bit older, you start to reappreciate a lot of the pop punk rock stuff, especially after a few beers, or if you're like skating and you're at some parking lot hanging out with friends, and someone plays like a punk rock song. Yeah, it's good music, Okay, it's not heavy, it's not brutal, but these are good songs. Good songs.
Yeah, it has the other side that Lipoma's all about. Like I felt like if it fit within your guys' discography or your discography with just how melodic that is, and pop punk in itself is just melodic music as well. Like even up to the vocal arrangements too. And how that intersects with the guitar melodies, like it worked out perfect because it's not too far of a step from melodic death metal that I hear. Because in my understanding, when I hear melodic death metal, it obviously comes from like heavy metal rather than branching out from within death metal. Like these bands didn't become melodic due to like listening to Cannibal Corpse or Deicide. It was like branching out to like Iron Maiden and getting that sort of influences in and creating this genre. And I think another half step from melodic death metal was like power metal, like Rhapsody and all those bands. Like you're basically listening to the same thing with different vocals,
Exactly.
And pop punk is not too far from not too far of a jump from that melodic guitar music,
And I would say that the greatest, they're not a pop punk band, but they're responsible for black metal, pop punk. One of the greatest bands of all time, I don't know if people will agree, are the Misfits.
Yeah, right? Definitely.
And the Misfits, if you listen to, Last Caress or Forbidden Zone or, it's punk chords. You know, it's
Yeah.
the chords that Blink 182 used after. You know, so and Misfits is you know, it's the most haunting. It's one of the best bands for me. Like I grew up listening and play. I was in a Misfits cover band for a long time, and yeah, what a band! What a band!
Yeah, definitely.
Ramones too. I mean, Ramones maybe less, you know, not as you know,
Like,
more clean cut, I guess.
yeah, not the horror pop,
But
more.
still,
Yeah.
yeah, not the you're right, not the horror stuff, but still, like, you know, good bands, historic bands.
Yeah.
Actually, my first concert I ever saw in my life, I was 12, I think, and I needed a chaperone because my parents were scared, and they assigned this friend of my dad who used to be into punk rock, and he actually was one of the big influences in my life, because when he found out that I was getting into punk, he gave me a bunch of CDs. Excuse me, and he gave me a Bad Religion CD. He gave me a No Fun at All CD. Gave me a Rancid CD. So I have a lot. So anyway, he chaperoned me at this concert, and this concert was Jerry Only from Misfits, Marky Ramone from Ramones on drums, and Des Cadena from Black Flag on guitar. And they played Misfit songs, black metal songs, Black Flag songs, and Ramone songs. And this was at the historic Rodon Club in Athens, Greece, which was a club where all the big bands have played. You know, like Ramones played there back in the day, and NoFX played, and NoFX show in Athens was very problematic. Like I don't know, crazy stuff happened back then, and that was my first exposure to like a live show. And so yeah, those bands, Ramones, Misfits, Black Flag, you know, those were like my heroes growing up. Like for me, that was insane.
And you just heard a supergroup basically.
Yes, right, a super group, exactly.
Then.
And I saw my first. And then I also saw. I was sitting there with my Rancid shirt, and and there was this. We were like at the front of the stage, and this guy turns around and just starts peeing at the side of the stage. And I was like, okay, that's punk, man. No, like that's punk. And it was like just a puddle of piss, like in the pit.
And I'll bring it back to like how has it been transitioning from being like a solo internet project to a full band, and did you expect like Lipoma to gain such a great internet following?
You know, you're absolutely right, and sometimes I forget to think about how Lipoma is an internet band. You know, it's something that arise from the internet, on Instagram, on Bandcamp. Well, when I released my first EPs on Bandcamp, for the first month, I was trending, my friend. I'm not like hyper. It's not a hyperbole. I was like number one on like grindcore and like like I was side to side with like Exhumed and all these bands, and then they censored me because of my artwork, and then I was what is it called, Shadow
Band, yeah.
Yeah, but I was, I can send you a screenshot of my the statistics where it's like up to the roof, like thousands of people listening every day, and then like 5 people every day. But yeah, it surprised me to this day how many people like this fucking band. It's crazy. And I've gotten shirt orders from every state in the United States, and for me that's crazy because I came here 10 years ago. I'm not from the United States, and to be embraced by this country and by the fans from all over the state is ridiculous. And even the place I live now, I won't say where, but there was a kid that liked it like Poma, and I live in a small town here in California, and he reached out and was like, "What, you moved here? I love your band." I was like, "Wow, even in this fucking small town, there's someone that likes Lipoma." Yeah, so and again, it's something that I'm just grateful for, and I'll say why, because there's so many bands out there that play amazing music, and they have might even be better than Lipoma and how they play. They use normal drums, they don't use drum programming, and they don't get this support. And I understand it's frustrating for some people because it's nice to have people listening to your music. It motivates you. A large reason why I released so many records in 4 years is because people were liking it. And if people are liking it, that motivates you. Okay, I'll give you more, motherfuckers. You want more? Here's a new full length, new full length. You'll hear more, and it's I'm grateful. And it's been a challenge now. So I've always said Lipoma will never be a live band, and I've explained my reasons because it's just a different type of world. But because of all these fans, I decided to take Lipoma live, and we're working on this now, and it's been very hard to find a drummer. We're working with a drummer who's a great dude and a great drummer, but I just, in my mind, I had a different idea of how the drum should sound because I've been used to the fucking drum programming machine for so long, and it's really hard to find a drummer out here. And then once we get the ball rolling, it will be a different type of band. I mean, not sound wise, but to schedule shows and find other bands to play. It's something that I'm kind of intimidated by, but it's definitely something I want to do because we were in the practice space the other day and we were playing like Hematomas of the Heart, Surgery of the Soul, Demonic Delusions, those songs. And, I don't want to blow smoke up my own ass, but they sounded so good live. They sounded so good. So hopefully this live Lipoma thing can work out and we can get to a stage. And, LA is the number one destination because we have, I have the most listeners of Lipoma are from LA. When I look, most of my shirt orders and merch orders come from LA. So I'm sure that if we do a show there, it's going to be crazy. But we got to find a drummer. So if you play drums and you're in the area, Monterey Bay Area, San Jose, that area, send me a message, please.
Yes, we need to hear Lipoma.
It will be fun because you play live not necessarily to show the people your music, but to create an experience. And I used to go to a lot of shows. I stopped going because I just got bummed with seeing shitty bands or bands that I thought were good and just did shitty performances. But a good band, and this is where this is where my punk roots kind of come in. You should leave a show and it should have affected you in some sort of way. Either it should have rocked your world or shocked you, or if I ever have the privilege of playing live for people, I will try to do that. That you will remember this live forever.
Yeah. And with like how many releases you've done, how long does it take you to write these songs and get out and get your music out? Because you did a lot within. Has it been 4 years now?
Sorry, say the last part again?
Oh, it's been like 4 years now, and you have like so many releases under your belt. Like how quickly do you write this stuff when you're, by yourself?
Yeah, remember this. So this is a funny story. This guy called, if people might know him, we're into black metal. His name is Rauta. He's a Finnish YouTuber who does like reviews, and I sent him Odes to Suffering to review. And he reviewed it. He bashed the record completely. He hated the record. But he did give it he gave it a 7 out of 10, which is weird to hear a guy bash your music for 12 minutes and then give it a 7 out of 10. Like when I was in school, I got 7 out of 10 all the time, and I was really happy, even though my parents were not happy about it. But anyway, and I remember if you can go on YouTube and you just put Rauta Lipoma, and it's funny because he starts his review. And he goes on to Metallum and he sees all the releases and he's like, "Oh, this is not a good sign." With all these fucking releases.
I think I did see that. Yeah, and he was like, "Oh, the production, like that was like his main gripe with it."
Yeah, he was talking about the production a lot, which I love this guy, for the stuff he does on reviewing music. I maybe not agree with his politics that much, but he was kind enough to do the review, so I don't hold that against him. Mm-hmm. But to go back to what you asked me, as Lipoma became, people started listening more, I wanted to give people more music. That's the one thing. The second thing is, I either had to write music for Lipoma or I would go insane. Like Lipoma was for me a way to externalize a lot of my psychological issues, my anxieties, all that bullshit people say. But it's true. It's true. Like Lipoma for me was my lifeline, especially living in New York and not having a good job and going through all the difficulties of life. And for me, sitting behind the computer and laying down a drum pattern and grabbing the guitar and putting down a riff, it was very easy for me to do. It was very easy and enjoyable. and a lot of the music that, I would say 85%, maybe not, 85% of the music is improvised. So, okay, you put down a drum track, and then you grab the guitar, and you just, I've had a few drinks, and, I'm like, okay, let's try this riff. And then, so a lot of it is improvised. And I was fortunate enough to, when I was younger, so this goes back to what I was saying about classical music, because I hated classical music, and my parents back then, they were very, I came from a very musical family, so everybody was very musically, everybody played a lot of music, and my parents, when they saw me struggling with classical, they got really scared because, I was going to not be musical like them. So they were like, okay, let's get him someone else, and they found this guy who I tried to reach after a while. He never responded to me. I got very sad. But they found this guy who was a jazz teacher, and he was also a clarinetist in a ska punk band called Dr. Drakator. You can find that stuff on YouTube. And this guy had a punk background, but he was also a very talented, trained jazz teacher. And I will give him a lot of credit, because the first thing he taught me was not scales or chords, because that stuff is pretty hard in jazz. He taught me how to improvise. And I get goosebumps when I say that, because that's such a great way of approaching teaching music to someone. To teach someone how to play music on their own without a teacher. I mean, that's what this guy taught me. And he said, you need to know some basic chords. He didn't overdo it. You need to know your scales. He didn't overdo it. And then he showed me on the piano how to improvise. And that, up to this day, I still have a lot of trouble to sit down and learn. Like, I'm trying to learn the song Leprosy now by Death. And I don't have the patience to sit down. But I learn a little bit of the riffs, and I improvise. So that comes much easier to me. And a lot of the Lipoma songs are, as you said, are improvisation. So that helps with producing a lot of music.
Yeah, that's really interesting about it being, improvised, because, the end goal of, learning music is, some people will want to, just read the charts and play what's played, but I think the more ambitious people want to write their own. So if you're learning right from the get-go how to do that, that's like, he's just handing over the keys to the gates.
Yeah, and I meet a lot of people who are like, oh man, how can you do that? It's so hard. And I don't think it's hard. I don't think improvisation is hard. You just, you definitely need some basic knowledge and of like chord and song structure. And here's another interesting story about how that allowed me to produce more. So I have an internet friend by the name of Vangelis, who's from Greece. So every Greek person that adds me on Instagram, they're instantly my friend, because Greeks are like that. We kind of stick together. And he was bugging me for a long time with like covers. He's like, do this cover, do that cover, do this cover. And I didn't really have time, but at some point he's like, do this lymphatic phlegm cover. I think it's going to be a good idea for Lipoma. This was before Lipoma. This was when I was in Borte. And I did. I think it's a song from the split with lymphatic phlegm and Last Days of Humanity. And I was like, okay, let me do it. I like the song. So I sat down and I studied the lymphatic phlegm song, and I realized that there's a very cool structure to lymphatic phlegm songs. It's basically like one riff that they use, but then they alternate this riff using different drum beats. So they have like a fast double pedal, and then they do like blasts, and then they do like some weird galloping on the drums. But then they use the same riff on top of these different, and it sounds like a different part, but it's essentially the same riff, which is also very similar to black metal, I think, because black metal also does that a lot. And by studying that shape of lymphatic phlegm, that's how basically Lipoma was born, because that's how that's what I wanted to do in the early stuff, and I still kind of do that to a certain extent. To you sit down, you have a few drinks, and you come up with a motif, as they say, right, or an idea, and you use that throughout the whole song, but you let the rhythm section kind of dictate the different parts. But the idea is there throughout the whole song. And that's why, I find Lymphatic Phlegm to be such a brilliant band, because they did that so well. And if you nail down this formula, that allows you to write a lot of songs, right? Because then you have a formula. You don't have to sit down and be like, okay, what's the verse? What's the chorus? You're like, no, you come up with a riff, and boom. And again, I'm fortunate enough that people like this because maybe people will be like, oh shit, this all sounds the fucking same, but people liked it, so it's a win-win situation.
Yeah, and that like drums are I play drums, so like I understand that it's like such a powerful you know instrument in bands in general. Like you said, it could just be one riff, but recontextualizing that riff with different beats is just like such a powerful tool because you can get a lot of mileage out of just one riff. A whole song you can do with just one riff, like you mentioned with the lymphatic phlegm. And I want to get into like you said, you're like a drummer first, right?
Well,
Like in most bands you played.
I played piano first, then guitar. So those are, I would say, well, probably now guitar is more comfortable, but I could never find a drummer, which haunts me to this very day. And I ended up playing the drums for all my bands. So I kind of learned drums the hard way.
Same here.
So I would say right. So I would say I'm a drummer, but I'm not technically like I reached like a limit to my drumming. Like when I had to play fast ankle double bass. I don't know what it is in beats per minute, but like over 200, I couldn't do that. I couldn't do fast blasts, like finger technique, like like last days, like that. I couldn't. I tried to practice. I bought like a drum pad and I tried it, but I wasn't patient enough, and I ended up not. I play with a lot of power, but I don't have that technique that unfortunately is needed for Lipoma.
Yeah, but with having at least attempted drums, like you said that you lay down like some patterns before you write the music, because I was also interested in that. I was like, do you write the music and then come up with the drum parts afterward? Because I assume a lot of guitar first solo projects do that, where they'll have the riffs and then try to put in the drum patterns to fit the riffs rather than vice versa, where you're like laying down these beats. And when I listen to it, the drums sound very dynamic, like you mentioned, with having just different beats throughout the song. Because a lot of gore grind, I don't know if you'll agree with me, but there's some that's just blasting the whole song, and then the riffs change, and that it feels a little less dynamic in that way. But laying down the drums first, it seems like there's a main difference between like bands that are riff oriented versus like drummer bands. Like there's some like Cauldron Black Ram, they're from Australia, I believe, and it's like a drummer first band. And you could say the same thing with like Absu, where the drummer's like sort of not like the main focus, but you can see a lot of like the musical structures and songwriting comes from within the drums. So it's like it's really interesting that you play or like lay down the patterns and then improvise riffs over it. Like it seems like a different approach that you'd hear instead of the regular stuff you'd hear from Gore grind.
Yeah, I start with the drums. Like I don't program the entire song, but I definitely lay down like a beat for maybe the intro. Like a lot of my songs have intros.
Yeah.
But I'll be completely honest, because a lot of people ask me about the drums, and I'm not embarrassed or something, but I'm very lazy. I'm a very lazy person. Even though I've produced so much EPs and stuff, but so by lazy I mean I'm not going to sit down and program the drums from scratch. So what I do is I've either like maybe purchased or find some drum loops.
Yeah.
And I just use those, and then obviously I tailor them, I change them a little bit. But sometimes they're perfect, and I'm like, okay, let's. So, like for example, there were like for like Tune Track, Easy Drummer that I used back in the day. They had tons of drum loops from death metal, black metal, thrash metal.
Yeah, million
and
blast
I was
beats.
just like, I would just drag it on there and be like, oh, okay, that's good. Let's just do it, and that saves you a lot of time. And for me, Lipoma was let's save time with the grunt work so that we can compose. And then let's do the editing after. Once the idea is down, then you go into the drums and you change them a little bit and you put some nice rolls and fills. But the composition, like the harmony or the idea of the song needs to be there, you know. And sometimes I worry that it becomes too formulaic. Like, you know, we have the intro, then the verse, you know, and I usually like to have a break in all my songs where we do some fiddling or a solo maybe or something. And you know, again, the new album was also a way to maybe depart a little bit from the lymphatic phlegm formula and maybe do something a little bit more different. And you know, we'll see. We'll see. You liked it, so I'm happy.
Yeah,
we'll see
definitely.
how the rest. We'll see how the rest like it.
And you know, going more into the full band era of Lipoma when that comes, like, do you think that will change the songwriting process as well? Like, with the live drums in there as well as having another guitarist or bassist in there,
Yeah.
will that influence the songwriting as well, or is it going to be like a spearheaded by you?
You know, the people that I found so far, James, the guitarist, and Vaughn, the bassist, they're both dudes that, you know, joined the band, and they told me from the get-go, they said, okay, it's your band, you've composed a lot, you know, we're here to play the music, and you know, and then I responded and I said, well, you're part of the band, so, you know, I also want you to contribute, you know, like it's a delicate balance, but they're very cool about kind of letting me do my own thing, but you know, I'm also very open to them because they're musicians. James is more from a death metal background, much more than me, so I'm curious to see what he brings. And you know, Vaughn is from what I've seen so far, he's an incredible musician, he's a much better guitarist than me, and he's a killer bassist, so he probably has really good ideas. And you know, I think that it will be definitely be the Lipoma formula with, because they also enjoy it, but they will bring in influences from their own styles. So I think it will be great. I think it's also, if Lipoma takes the live route, which I hope it does, but it's challenging. It's definitely going to be a progression, because a band should always progress and change a little bit. I mean, I could write, you know, Excision of Monsters Teratoma EPs for the next 10 years, but you know, I think it would get boring after a while. You know, you need to change it up a little bit.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to see how it would be with you know, other minds contributing to the songwriting. I think you know, just bouncing ideas off someone, or even having that second point of view that's like, maybe that part shouldn't be there. Maybe we could say that for another song, and you know, it turns out completely different from how you imagined it, but you still end up liking it. Like that's why I really enjoy playing with other musicians and bands. It's like, yeah, it's not all on your shoulders, you know.
Exactly.
And I'll say with the album coming out, you know, really soon, how are you able to get like these record deals, and you know, especially the ones like overseas? Like, are people reaching out to you, or are you reaching out to them? Like, how's that go?
Yeah, you know, I wouldn't call them deals. I mean, essentially, you're right. There are deals because it's a transaction, and you know, they do something, you know. But all the people I've worked with are all, you know, either one man operations. I guess Reality Fade is not a one man operation because he actually has people working for him.
Him and the
But
dog.
it's still like a right, yeah, right. But it's still like, you know, all these people are very, you know, have a DIY mentality.
Yeah.
So they let me dictate the artistic direction. Like Reality Fade, all the stuff they produced, the merch is all the stuff that I told them to produce. And then all the people that, you know, helped me release my music, going back to Glesio from Old Grinder Days Records, Doug from Grand Vomit Productions, Ryan from Gurgling Gore, Taylor from Scumlord Distro. I hope I'm not forgetting anybody here. I don't. There is, I forget her name, but she's from Mexico, and she's Rotten Brain Productions, I think is her label. But the first four people I mentioned, you know, they really gave me, you know, they really just released my music, and they worked with me, and you know, they reach out. Most of the people reached out to me, and I think for Ryan, I reached out to him to make the vinyl for No Cure for the Sick, which actually sold out. The pre-order sold out in like a couple days. So he pressed, I think, 100. Well, he pressed 200, and 100 records are now gone, and the rest will come to me and to distros and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, these deals or these collaborations, they happened in a very cool way. And I don't think. Well, first of all, I don't think Lipoma would be. Never say never, but even if a big label approached me, which I don't think it would, because I don't play live, so there's not that much, because the money is made through live, right? That's where these fuckers want. Yeah. So that's the first, and the second is, there's not that much money to be made in Gore grind. You did see Fester Decay recently got signed to Relapse. Yeah. Relapse
Oh, really?
Records, I think. Yeah. But even if that happened, I don't think that would fit the artistic creation of this band. And I've thought about that, like, hey, what if someone reaches out to me and says, yo, I will sign you and you have to produce these records, and well, what happens then? Do you own my music? They do. They own the master tapes and stuff, and they can do whatever the fuck they want with them. And then with owning your music come also other responsibilities, like playing live and like doing interviews, and I think that would change the identity of the band a lot. The band Lipoma started as a basement band. It started by growing its fan base organically. Okay, granted, through Instagram, what can we do? It's just the medium of reaching the most people, but it's a band that always relied on interaction with a dedicated fan base. And the fan base of Lipoma is growing, but it's I'm a very open person. If people DM me, I don't follow a lot of people back, because I tried that in the beginning, and then I saw everybody's stories and posts, and that just drove me crazy. I couldn't handle it. But if people want to send me, it's way too much. But if people want to send me a DM or ask me a question, or people ask me all the time about what drum they use, or they send me something, I always respond to most people. Even if people send me dumb memes, I sometimes I respond to them. So I don't know why I'm saying all this. Oh yeah, that the route of a more commercial or mainstream band it's unrealistic. For Lipoma, and and the final thing I'm going to say is that I have a job that pays okay, and Lipoma was always my hobby, and I can't see myself turning this into a job. It doesn't fit. It's always a hobby, and that's why it's so fun for me to engage with it.
Yeah, it wouldn't be the same if it was the other way around.
But I gotta say that there are probably still people out there that think that what I'm doing now is selling out. So to those people, I'm sorry. What can I do?
No, like you said, you're
for people who are like in Gore noise, even like, I don't know. For me, the people I'm working with now, I think it's DIY. It's still DIY underground, at least in my books. I don't think these people are commercial. At least,
I like the way that you said you phrased it. It's more of a collaboration than like a like a deal. It's like you guys are sort of like-minded, keeping it DIY and giving you that artistic freedom, and they reach out to you because they like the music and they want to put it out. So it's like, it's a win-win situation.
Yeah, and I'll give, I won't say who, but one of the people that put out my music, I will say, like Ryan from Gurgling Gore, for example, he sold 100 vinyls, so he probably, he covered his costs and probably made some money, and he sends me a big chunk of those records, and the rest he sends to distros, and he sends to distros at a discounted price. So he could, given all the clout that this new record is getting, he could sell the rest of the records if he wanted and make double the money, or maybe even triple. But he decided to send those records out to distros because he believes that this music should be out there. And when he told me that, I was like, I greatly respect that about you, because that's how underground lives. By getting the music in more hands, rather than around the world, rather in more hands in America and making more money.
Yeah, because being just hearing you from a sticker I got from Reality Fade that they just threw in an order. It's like just that is like such a powerful thing. I ordered something from across the world, and met you at a show.
cool stuff, huh?
Yeah. And let's see. With what are some bands that you're listening to like nowadays that are maybe you don't even I was gonna say, what are some bands that you listen to nowadays that are sort of like progressing a genre, sort of, or making a genre unique, like Lipoma, but you may not even be listening to stuff like that. So what do you listen to nowadays?
Yeah, I'm gonna disappoint people because I don't listen. So it's to go back to what I said all the way at the beginning of this interview. If I was a fan and a band like Lipoma got on my Spotify list or I ended up on their Bandcamp, I probably would not become a fan. Yeah, and the reason why is that, and I'm being, again, I'm very honest about this. I don't know why I don't seek a lot of new music. I am, and I'll use the term conservative for this. I listen to a lot of classic stuff. I revisit classic stuff, not just gore grind, but also just rock, blues, and stuff like that. And that's not because I'm like a snob or, if I see something like I don't know, like what did I listen to? Like so for example, this Brazilian guy who plays in a gore grind band called Petio, Petiot. I listened to his stuff on Gore Grinder, and I loved it. It's like carcass sound, very brutal, and I immediately said like, dude, let's split. So I do explore like recent stuff, but I'm mostly listening to other stuff, and I also don't listen that much to Gore Grind anymore. I when I moved to California, I got back into like listening to a lot of skate punk. I tried to find new bands that do punk rock, and I didn't like any of them, so I went back to like all the old bands I listened to. Same thing happened with thrash metal. I'm into this. I'm in the thrash metal mode right now because I'm rediscovering my right hand guitar technique, and I'm trying to learn how to gallop better. And I'm just listening to a lot of Slayer and a lot of Exodus and a lot of Megadeth and a lot of Hyrax. And I tried finding some new bands. Like I listened to they're not really new, but Havoc, they're a thrash band. But I like them. But I like the old school sound a lot, the older bands. And recently I've been into a lot of bluegrass. Because I've been working on guitar stuff, right hand technique, and like Stanley Brothers, the Dillards, just cross picking techniques, and trying to learn that. And who knows, maybe that will make its way into Lipoma. Maybe not bluegrass, but more like kind of technical, techie stuff on the guitar.
Yeah, like
So,
filtering that through the sound.
Exactly, yeah. So, but if something comes across on my radar, I'll listen to it. But I'm not actively seeking like new gore grind or, yeah. It's also what kind of mood you're in. I also got into a lot of, because I spend a lot of time on the beach, and I bodyboard, and I try to kind of take walks in nature and in the sand dunes. I got into a lot of like African like desert blues, like stuff like Tuareg music, like Malian stuff, like Ali Farka Touré. I don't know if people know that. That's just like all like kind of blues but played in Africa. And that stuff is like, if you like bands like Caius, for example, like it's similar. It's just it was recorded like maybe 80 years ago or something.
Yeah.
And it's just I love heavy music. I'll never get tired of heavy music, but I listen to a lot of different stuff, and that's also what makes Lipoma also what it is influences from other stuff. Like I remember this guy from this band called Lubrication. Check them out. They're from Germany. He sent me a gore grind band. Now that's a new gore grind band that I really enjoyed, Lubrication. They sent me a DM and they're like, dude, how do you write such interesting riffs? I was like, you just gotta listen to different stuff and steal their riffs, like a lot of the Odes to Suffering riffs are from Greek music. Like Greek music my parents and my grandparents listened to, and Greek music is still the music that it's probably the only music that can make me cry because of nostalgia and because I was born there. And Greek music has this great attribute. This is the music we call rebetika. That's how you can search that, rebetika. And in terms of guitar work, rebetika combines both kind of happy, so major scales and minor scales in one riff. So one phrase can be both happy and then sad and then happy again, or sad then happy and then sad again, and bands like At the Gates also use that. It's depending on the scale. So I take a lot of influence from other type. But yeah, so I mentioned Pedio and Lubrication, and I would say that another band that I don't think he's active anymore. I think he's making more like weird ambient techno stuff now. Serotonin Leakage is a band that I also did a split with my previous band Borte, and he took a very interesting approach to Gore grind because he put synthesizers in, and he put synthesizers in way before I did, something that nobody has ever done, and I think it really worked for him. And this is another band that as when Lipoma got a little bit more fans, I was always thinking about Serotonin Leakage because I think that band deserves a lot more attention than what it got. And Doc Dank, if you're listening, I love you, bro. But yeah, he's in a lot of different projects. But Serotonin Leakage, I thought was a brilliant band, still is, and I got a lot of influence from that band when I was starting, because I was like, okay, if he can put synthesizers in Gore grind, maybe I can do it, So there you go.
And with listening to like the great bands, you're kind of just cutting the middleman out with a lot of bands in different subgenres, like even within Greek black metal. Like a lot of that stuff just comes from like heavy metal, like Merciful Fate and stuff like that. So you're just kind of coming from the source rather than going through a filter of something. And I think that's a good way to avoid becoming like a clone band. A lot of bands will just listen to something that they really like and they'll just try to mimic that rather than going to the influences that band got inspiration from and created that music with. So I think you're going right to the source, which is good, and branching out to other genres is what makes Lipoma such a unique makes such unique music.
Yeah, thanks, man. And I use the word, not to get too intellectual here, although I use the word conservative. Like conservatism means when you want to go back to the roots and kind of stick to the roots. But I don't think that conservatism is good. Like you should go back to the roots, but then you should allow the roots to bring you into new areas. So that's definitely not conservatism. That's like, I don't know. That's being like post, like exploring new. But I think that to go into the future, you still need to look a little bit at how the classics did it, because there's just so much good musicianship that happened in the past. Not to say that people now are not good, but there was just a different, I don't know, maybe back in the day things were not as interconnected. There wasn't the internet, there wasn't Instagram, there wasn't phones, there was just a little more, I don't want to use the word purity, but there was more like rawness or more, I don't know, it just, things just sounded different back then.
Yeah, it was a little bit more like self-reliant. Like they had these influences, bare bone influences, and then came up with things on their own from that, rather than having everything laid out for you and you just pick a sound.
Exactly.
And speaking about other music, let's go back to what's your favorite release from Lipoma, and like to piggyback on that, how does the new album compare to the rest of the discography?
So I'll start with let me see. Oh no, I'll answer your first question. I think my favorite release, and I listen to Lipoma just sometimes, just to take a trip down memory lane, because it's not so much as to like listen to the music and be like, oh, listen to the song I wrote, but it's more about, wow, I wrote this song and I was feeling this certain way, or I wrote this song when this was happening in my life, so it's kind of like a way to think about my life. And I think the record that, it's hard to pick a record, because every single record, every single split for me represents a moment in my life.
Yeah.
But I would say that Mysteries of Surgical Oncology, which is a compilation of that moment where I started maybe incorporating more melody, but it was had that rawness of the first releases. So the compilation Mysteries of Surgical Oncology, which is basically the split with Pseudomonas aeruginosa and Golem of Gore with some few extra songs, and the cover of that huge tumor. That is a record that I can listen to and I'll be like, I'm impressed with what I put there, because it was a little bit simpler than the other stuff, and just conceptually I just like the name Mysteries of Surgical Oncology. It just sounds so cool. I wish that I used that for a full length. So that's probably my favorite one. And then the new record, obviously because I wrote it right now and I'm kind of obsessed with it. I'm curious to see what people will think. I think it's my best work, but once you take a little bit of a distance from it, I'll probably see it in a different perspective. Like the same way, like I have a different perspective on Horrors of Pathology. Like I listen to Horrors of Pathology, I'm like, okay, this is a good record. People really liked it. People think it's the best Lipoma record, but I think that maybe I overdid it with the bass sound. Could have been a little bit more refined. I could have added a little bit more stuff there. So right now I think No Cure for the Sick is the best. But if you talk to me after a few months, and maybe I've changed my mind. It's also the time this record, and I swore I wouldn't do this when I finished Odes to Suffering, because Horrors of Pathology, I didn't mix it that much. I mixed it, I wasn't satisfied with it, I sent it to a mixing engineer in Brazil who did a good job, but I didn't like it at all, and I was like, okay, fuck it, I'm just going to do my old mix. And then for Odes to Suffering, I spent a lot of time on the mix, and when I mixed, I was like, I'm never going to do this again. And then for the current record, I spent 3 times the time I used on Odes to Suffering. And it reached a point where I started getting a little bit obsessive and a little bit like, it became a little bit unhealthy, how much I was mixing the sound. And the way out of it was I went back into my old mixes of Horrors of Pathology, and I just saw that what made the Horrors of Pathology a standout record was the amount of bass. So I cranked up the bass on No Cure for the Sick, and I remember listening to it in the car, and I was like, okay, I found it. And then I just, at some point, to go back, when I was mixing like my early stuff, at some point I reached the point where I told myself, it's good enough for Gore Grind, send it. The more I released more stuff, the more this idea became less. I started thinking, oh, you can make it perfect, you can make it perfect, you can make it perfect. And at some point for No Cure for the Sick, I had this thought where just fucking send it, it's done, You're too lost in your thoughts in reference tracks, and but at the end of the day, it's a hobby, and even though I suffered, I had fun doing it. It's like when I don't know if people, I've never built like something from scratch, like people like to build like airplanes or stuff. Like maybe that's crazy for them because they suddenly break something and they have to re-glue it and they have to repaint it, and it's they're like, okay, it's crooked, they have to refix it. So it's just like it's what you do with a hobby. You spend time because the rest of your life is maybe not as interesting, and you're trying to find meaning in your hobbies. So even if it's not fun and it's you're causing you great pain and suffering, that's the price you pay, and that's the hobby. So at the end of the day, you should just have fun with it.
Yeah, you can definitely be in that mixing purgatory for as long as you want.
Oh man, it's terrible. But I would never again. I tried giving it to an engineer, and some people say you shouldn't mix your own stuff, that you should take a distance from it. But I'm so I don't know what's the right word, so I don't come off as arrogant or something. But I guess I just like to be in control of everything, and
yeah, it's your baby.
Yeah, it's your baby. Yeah, even if you like fuck your baby up and they become a serial killer,
That's funny. But yeah, I think I'm gonna have definitely a biased opinion of liking this record the most, the newest one, just because the experience that I had with it. Like, I asked you to do this interview, and you said, here's some tracks to preview, and then you also, got a CD coming on the way. Like, I'm gonna have a lot more.
Yeah, it's gonna send it. Yeah, of course.
I'm gonna have a lot more like sentimental value with this record, and just hearing the progression from horrors to O's, which was my favorite until I heard No Cure. Like it just has this one's gonna have a big attachment for me. Like I really enjoy it. I think the production job, you could just hear it getting like just more and more full, not only in like just like beefiness, but also in the musical density and even just guitar tones and the drum samples. Like they just sound a lot more full in this full length. Because this whole past week, I just been listening to your discography over and over, and it's like whenever I get to the latest album, it's like it's almost like a night and day difference with the production style. It's really, I think you really hit it out of the park.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate the kind words. You know, it's a good feeling when other people share the excitement of something that you've put out. It's a good feeling.
Yeah, and let's get this like last question out of the way, and then we'll move on to like the second part of the show. So what's on the horizon for Lipoma? You got maybe the roadblock of finding the drummer, but live shows, maybe Obscene Upstream playing there, more
Oh
splits.
man, I wish.
Um, you know, is there like is this material for No Cure for the Sick something you had like for a while, and you already have some new music that you're writing? Like what's next for Lipoma?
Yeah, so there's this. So my approach to lipoma is that I've this is the third full length, and full lengths are a way for me to craft something that is and you've described it beautifully, and thank you. Is that it's a listening experience? It's something that you can listen. It's not just one track. Do people even listen to full lengths that way anymore? I don't know, but it's that's how I want it to. That you listen from start to finish. And it's very melodic, and there's organ in there and classical, and that stuff. And some people may be like, ah, bleh. But then there's the second part of Lipoma, which is the collaborative part, which is the splits. Where in the splits I have less time. I have 10 to 15 minutes, and I've reserved the more traditional approach to Gore grind for those splits. So splits with Pedio, with Torture Pig, Corrupted. Those are songs that are a little bit closer to kind of more traditional Gore grind. And I have the split coming out. I don't know when it's going to come out. Hopefully, I wanted it to come out before the fucking full length. But anyway, that's life. And that's a split that's curated by the famous Roman from Bizarre Lepers production, which when he hit me up, speaking of a fangirl, right? That's the word you used.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my god, Bizarre Lepers wants to release a Lipoma. And I was very honored, because he said, oh, it's an honor to release Lipoma. I'm like, dude, it's an honor that you're releasing my stuff. Like, and a side note here, also like labels like Fat Tub of Lard and the other one, I forget his name now. Another label from Indonesia, I think.
Brutal Mind.
Brutal Mind, yes. I used to buy shirts from them when I was like, very young, and for them to reach out to me. So Rahman from Bizarre Lepers is putting up a split with Lipoma, with Egg Gore, Gore with like 3 or 4 G's, and Liquid Viscera. And there, I kind of changed the sound a little bit. So there I down-tuned for the first time to, I think, B standard. Most of my stuff is in E and D and some in C standard, but this is down to B and traditional Gore grind. So that's going to come out at some point. And I'm going to continue doing splits and exploring the Gore grind sound, but also I'm thinking about the next full length that will happen maybe in a year. And for the next full length, I had the idea of kind of going back to the very, very early sound, stripping it from all melody. I might not even do that in the end, because I will end up putting melody, but doing something that is like Excision of Monsters Teratoma, something like that.
Okay.
I also love blues, and I mean, you can hear a lot of blues influences in many of the songs, and blues solos and stoner riffs. So maybe combining the early sound with more groove, I'll see, something like that. So that's the future. Continuing with those full lengths, but also splitting with bands, and also splitting with bands that are not as well known. This band from Mexico hit me up, Demons Rottings. I would like to split with them. Beaver Fever. I'm gonna split with them too. She's from Canada, one man band. There's a band from Endometriosis from Italy. You know, bands that have started. They don't have that many releases, but it's a cool way to also use my reach to, well, not expose, to showcase lesser known bands. So
Yeah.
Right now all that stuff is taking a backseat because I'm putting so much energy into live Poma, but that is definitely the direction that I want to keep taking.
Nice. And with that, let's take a little break, and then we'll come back and listen to some of your music.
Sounds good.
Welcome to the Bunsen Burner Podcast.
Alright, we're back from the break, and we're getting into some songs from Lipoma's discography, and what a better way to do it than right from the start. So you want to do the second song from Excisions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Alright, you're going to have to pronounce that for me. I'm no doctor.
Yeah, this is the second song from the 2021 EP Excision of Monsters Teratoma, and it's the song Adiposis Dolorosa, which is, let me cheat by, I should know this, but I'm actually not a doctor. It's a rare disorder characterized by painful lipomas. So I guess, so it's like when you have a lot of lipomas in your body, not just one, but multiple.
Nice. I can't wait to hear some Lipoma clone bands, and you guys can go on a tour or something.
Yeah. There's actually a band that copied my logo completely.
Oh, really?
Their name is Lupo, Luppo. They play like Mince Gore grind. I have no problem with that, by the way. I contacted them. I found it a little strange because if you I don't know I think they're on Instagram. If you go Lupo Instagram, I don't know if it comes out, but I thought that was pretty funny. Anyway.
Well, I'll look at that during the song, so we'll be right back. Alright, we got probably the shortest song we sampled on BBR.
34 seconds.
Yeah, and...
It might be. I think it's the shortest Lipoma song ever.
Oh, is it?
Yep, it's the shortest Lipoma song.
Got some competition right here. There's like 40 seconds, 41, 38 on the same release, so got the shortest one here. Nice and sweet, because like right when it started, or it seemed like it was almost sandwiched between two grooves. Like it just starts off really, really groovy, and then goes into a more like snare on 2 and 4 kind of beat, then goes into a blast, slows back down to that 2 and 4 beat, and then goes back into a groove. And the riffs on there just get contextualized in such different ways just by those drum beats. And I can totally hear what you said about like having that like really bassy sound. It's like such a, I don't know, like an infectious atmosphere when I listen to that. Yeah, but what can you tell us about this song?
Yeah, so the reason why I chose this song is, it's the rhythm is what makes it, I think, pretty cool. Like it has some blasts, obviously, but it has like it's a very groovy, it's a very groovy song. Like
It's almost a breakbeat-ish.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's like a break beat, right? It's like a, yeah, I don't know. It's a good one. It's. I think from the whole EP, it's probably one of my favorite ones. Uh, I think what makes it interesting is when I recorded this, I did not know what I was doing. The only thing I wanted to do was to create the most extreme pathological gore grind track. So I had a very kind of, I don't want to say competitive approach, but I wanted to make a statement. You know, I was like, you know, this is a band called Lipoma, and you know, it has to be in your face. And you know, okay, this is I'm being completely honest here. I'm an open book. I have nothing to hide. I'm just laughing because it's funny. So when I recorded this, I made a mistake at the end. I accidentally sped up the entire EP, and I realized this. I realized this all the way after it was released that I had sped it up. So it's unnaturally fast. But that's what made it so cool. So the drums and the speed. The guitars sound so brutal, and you know, but what I was doing back there, I had no idea. I think I was using some weird guitar VST. I don't even know what I was using back then. I can't even find out because all those files are probably gone. But what I do remember quite clearly was I wanted to create the most brutal vocals. So I was drinking some beers because most Lipoma music is beer fueled, and I did not know how to scream, so I was like, let me just scream so much that I started screaming, and I puked. And I was like, okay, yeah, and then I listened back, and I was like, wow, this sounds incredible, because the puking sounds and all that stuff made it sound, you know, like, okay, I'm gonna get a little bit detailed here, but when you puke, or when you have like liquid stuck and, you know, it bubbles or it like pops, that the pitch shifter grabs that and transforms it, and it just sounds incredible. So I was like, okay, this will be painful, but it's worth it. So I took a bucket and I had it next to me, and I recorded the entire EP, and I puked many times.
Oh man, some people try to get that sound artificially, but you got it right there.
I mean, you know, obviously there's the pitch shift, which is an assistance, but the puking was what made it, I think, pretty good. And you know, the I had that bucket next to me, and I don't know if my neighbors back then in Brooklyn heard me do this, because it probably sounded like someone was being tortured in my room. But yeah, that's the story of the song, man. And again, it was recorded really fast. Like the entire EP was just like, let's do it fast, quick, not think too much about it. And the reason why I wanted to start with this is that when I listen back, I'm like, wow, I wish I could go back and record something like this. And I don't know if I'm able to do that, because now I'm some refined intellectual asshole that puts classical music and Bach. But, you know, this is the shit, you know? So hopefully the next album will be similar to this.
Yeah, that's what the, the splits are for.
Yeah, but, you know, you're right. But I wonder, you know, the thing is, if people are now listening to the new record and they're like, oh, it has classical music and it has riffs and all that, but, you know, the next album might be on a totally different direction. We'll see.
Well, yeah, look where he came from, you know, the bucket to bucket to the opera.
To the opera, exactly.
All right, so we're gonna go into from the beginning, from that EP, we're gonna go into the first album, Horrors of Pathology. I chose the song Coping with Chronic Illness, and I'm sure you guys will see why I like it so much. So we'll be right back.
You know, and that person that I was before that day has gone.
right, we're back from the second song from Horrors of Pathology, Coping with Chronic Illness. And man, right out of the gate, that sample and those like guitar, single string chords that you're plucking there, like it's just such a mood, and you only do it 2 times, and then it goes into this groove section with the drums, but it's like almost a 2-part riff where you're kind of grooving along with it, chugging, and then it goes into like I'm not a guitarist, but it's like such a unique sound, like having that black metal influence in there, and then right after that, at the Gates riff, like how can you deny that? Like it's such a great, catchy melody there, and you recycle some of these riffs later into the song, but just adding vocals on top of it, syncopating with those melodic notes is like it elevates it even more, where it's not like not a boring listen, like every time it comes around, it's like there's something else to listen for, which is really great. It's almost like adventurous in that sort of way, and there's points in the song where it almost seems like it's gonna end, but then the drums just lasso you back in, and it's just like, no, you're not done. We gotta blast some more, and exactly. I love the outro where it's just that one ring chord with the vocals. Puking comes back up again. But yeah, what can you tell us about this? Maybe where's that sample from?
Yeah, so the sample is from I think just coping with. So the song is coping with chronic illness. So it's about having to deal with a malady or a disease that is slowly killing you. So it's a pretty serious topic that it's purposely vague, because everybody has dealt with a loved one, or maybe even themselves, with having to deal with something that is chronic. It's definitely one of the worst things that can happen to you, unfortunately, because we come to this world as beings, and unfortunately, or I don't know, the way that we exist as humans, we suffer from disease. It's just there's no human that will not suffer from any sort of disease or ailment. It's just the way we have been programmed by whatever is out there, or the way that we have adapted, or etc. So that's kind of the philosophical approach to it. The sample is from just some YouTube documentary in England that was about some lady that was dealing with something very bad. I don't remember, a cancer or something. And I mean, it's not a laughing matter, but it's still art. Like some people, not many people, but some people have like approached me and be like, why are you creating art from someone suffering? Like, why are you portraying people that are suffering? And my response to them is, first of all, we all suffer, right? You're at some point in your life, hopefully later, not young, you will suffer from something. It's just inevitable. It's the inevitability of life.
Yeah.
And for me, that's just a metaphor for life. And for me to create this metaphor and to make it hard hitting, I have to pick some aspects of life. And one was the sample from this lady. And taken aside from the context, the way, if you hear a woman speaking to you in a British accent, just has something haunting about it. I think
Oh, definitely.
the way that the vowels or the P sounds hit you. It's a good sample. And I don't remember. I have to listen to it again. But she says, my life was. See, this is what I mean. I always forget everything. Can I listen to it? Let me listen
of course.
to it again. Is that gonna fuck up the?
No, go for it.
So let me just see what she says again. That person. Oh yeah, she's like, the person that I was before that day was gone, which, aside from the whole medical thing, is a very existential thing. Like, it's all about I lost myself in this disease. I'm a different person now. And even if you're not suffering from something, when you hear that sample, it haunts you. So it prepares you. So at the same time as you're hearing this haunted sample that questions your very essence in this life, I have these open chords, which to nerd out a little bit, I always played guitar on my own, Because sometimes it was hard for me to find other people to play guitar with, and when I found other people to play guitar with, I kind of had to settle. You do the guitar, you do the rhythm, you do the lead, and for a lot of my guitar work, I try to combine rhythm with lead, and the way that you manage that as a guitarist is with a lot of open strings, right? Which is also why I'm getting along to bluegrass right now, and I almost bought a banjo last night, but I'm gonna wait for a little bit because I'm trying to perfect my guitar bluegrass skills. But like bluegrass or like finger picking style combines rhythm and lead. Like you can hear, like really good guitarists can play a rhythm and also play a melody at the same time. So that's kind of that was what I was trying to do here, albeit in a very simplistic manner. And just open chords. And I use a lot of open G strings when I play these things, and I think this is in A, or I think it's an A minor maybe, I don't know. But it just gives this haunted melody. So the intro it's a very good intro, and then obviously you get the blast beats and the at the gate style riffing, and the vocals. But it's when you suggested the song and I listened back, it took me back, and it's surprising because. Quite a few people have messaged me about this song particularly, and they said like, yeah, this song, because of the title and the intro, like I can feel a lot of things when I listen to this song because it strikes a chord in me. So thank you for picking this. It's it's a good one. It's a good one. And as you said, there's a moment where you think it has ended, but nope. There's still more, just like life,
Yeah, it's not done with you. Not in the final stages.
Yeah.
Yeah, great song. I really enjoy that one. Let's move on to Odes to Suffering. The song that I picked for that one was Guide Thy Surgeon's Hand. So that's, I believe, the 13th track on this 16-track album. So one a little later into the listening experience. So we'll go and give that one a listen, and we'll be right back. Alright, we're back from Guide Thy Surgeon's Hand. Just to show the little evolution there, it's like the drum samples that you're using there sound a little bit more like precise, and like you can actually hear the articulation between the snare and the ride cymbal. Like you can tell they're not hitting at the same time. You hear the like skank blast, and the rhythm on that single note melody to open up the song just shows sort of like an evolution from the open chord plucking that you're doing. It's like you're not only finding rhythm in that way, but also just in the single note melodies, which is more of like a more tremoloed, like traditionally in black metal. Like you're grooving it out here, which is great.
So I want to do something unconventional maybe, but I think you will enjoy it, and the listeners will also enjoy it. And you don't have to press pause, but I don't know if you're in front of your computer, but could you go to my Bandcamp page?
Yeah.
And then I want you to pull up 2 releases. I want you to pull up first the Into the Dark Abyss of Adipose Disease, which is a release with a photo of a man with a huge lipoma on his back. And then I also want you to pull up the split with Infester.
All right, right next to each other.
Yeah, and let's, if you can, I mean, I'm sure you'll edit this, but the reason why I'm doing this is that the song "Guide Thy Surgeon's Hand" has had 2 different iterations.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So this is this is nerd stuff for the lipoma fans. So let's listen to the first one, which is the early iteration of this track, which is the second track of Into the Dark Abyss of Adipose Disease, which is ovarian teratoma filled with pus, hair, teeth, fat, and excess tissue.
All right, let's go into that track and see how it compares.
All right.
We are back from that rendition.
So that was the. Yeah. Are we live?
Yeah, now we're live.
Okay. Yeah. So that's the original version of it. And if I may talk a little bit about the intro, politics aside, obviously I don't agree with this man's politics. For those of you that know me, that you know me, but this is basically a way to write a song like the Borzum Jesus Todd song, however those fucking Norwegians pronounce it, which is just a very haunting melody with a lot of like arpeggio picking, and that's how this song kind of started. So that's one influence, and then I want us to play the first track from the split with Infester, because the Guide Thy Surgeon's Hand has that kind of harmonic melodic death metal riff, and that's from the song. Okay, I have to take a fibrohistocytic differentiation in subcutaneous fatty tissue.
All
the
right,
first track.
We're gonna listen to that, and we'll be right back.
जो है लिपोमा के बारे में, तो लिपोमा इज नथिंग बट ए फैटी टिश्यू। तो ये क्या होता है कि आपका जो स्किन है और जो मसल लेयर है उसके बीच में ये फैटी टिश्यू डेवलप होता है।
We're back. Damn, that sounded like a completely different song.
Right, but see, it's at the end. There's that little riff. So, "Guide Thy Surgeon's Hand," as many people like that song. It's actually the #1 song in streams on Spotify. It's the most popular song. Who would have thought? But I just wanted to break it down that it's a collection of very early stuff from 2 releases. And I just wanted to throw that out there because I don't know, some people might listen to it and be like, "Oh fuck, those older ones sounded so much better than that shitty commercial Guide That Surgeon's Hand." But and I gotta be honest, Paul. As I was listening to the man, I don't know. I feel like a fucking the fans that get pissed off when Lipoma releases the new stuff, because those old songs, man, I don't know. They sound so much more fun for me. I wish I could go back in time and relive recording those songs. 'Cause, just a minute, 30 seconds, but I had so much fun making it, man. I'm getting emotional now listening to all that old stuff. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's great. Like I love the way that it was like the tempo was almost doubled at the beginning of that
Yeah,
that
right.
black metal riff. It was like, yeah, just recontextualizes it completely, and that nasty production on that first one just puts that in a new light too.
Oh,
So
yeah,
good.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's
But,
great. I never caught that. There was like two other two other
Yeah,
tracks
there's so
like
many
that.
gems. Yeah, I mean, I'm really happy that I get to say this story. With how this song has influences from the early stuff, and both songs, both releases. I mean, Into the Dark Abyss of Adipose Disease has some of my favorite songs in there, especially the last song, Into the Dark Abyss of Adipose Disease, has a really cool sample in the beginning. That's one of my favorite songs. It's an Iggy Pop song who he collaborated with this like Serbian artist, and I stole their sample and put it in the beginning. So if you want to listen to it, you can. It's the sixth one. But the split with Infester was one that propelled Lipoma. After the split, that's when a lot of people started noticing, because a lot of people enjoyed it. And Fester is one of the many projects from Bobby Maggard, who's a very influential dude in the area of gore grind and gore noise, who I had the pleasure of collaborating and also exchanging many emails a few years ago and just talking about life and stuff. And he has a sick guitar collection. He's a very cool individual. He has a record label called Regurgitated Stallman Stew Productions, which I think he stopped. But if you're into obscure gore grind and gore noise that is unlike Lipoma, much more underground, look him up, because he is he's like the Mozart of gore grind and gore noise. This guy has released so much stuff, and it was such a pleasure to create this split with him. And still to this very day, there are many fans that when they're asked what their favorite Lipoma releases, they say it's the Lipoma Infester split. So I had to bring that in there, yeah. So that's it. In terms of music, we are trying to play the song live. It sounds pretty cool live. The harmonies of the guitar during that At the Gatesy riff sound very cool, and it's a good song. It's a good song. I actually say the word Lipoma a lot in the lyrics because it just sounds good. And that's some extra info. And Guide Thy Surgeon's Hand was just a way to make it. I mean, to be completely honest, if you look at the early Lipoma songs like fibrohistocytic differentiation in subcutaneous fatty tissue and intergenous eroded crusty lesions and large mulberry-like cells with abundant eosinophilic granular cytoplasm, this is all inspired by bands like Lymphatic Phlegm and all these old gore grind bands. And Guide Thy Surgeon's Hand is much more of a appeasing track title, right?
Mm-hmm.
It sticks in your mind, and maybe it was a conscious decision to go into that route, just to, I don't want to say sanitize it, no pun intended, but just to make it more memorable. Because as much as I love these long pathological names, a track name like Coping with Chronic Illness just has a more power to it than the rest.
Yeah.
Maybe that's called selling out in the gore grind underground, but there you go.
No, it's great to hear all the different renditions of it, and like even the last one where it has the sample at the beginning too, where it says the namesake in it. So it's like it's just nice to hear it in all these forms and to where it ended up.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yeah, and the thing I want to say, but I hope I'm not talking too much, but
No, you're good.
is that every single of these songs, something went into them. Some thought. It's not just a song that I just just throw it out there. There's something that can be even though most of these songs are improvised, I don't just shit out a song. Like there needs to be like a little lore of a story in there, and we could do like a lot more hours and talk about many more of the older songs, and I could tell you a lot more about some of those, because there are a lot of like hidden, how do you say, nuggets, or like gems, you know?
Yeah.
Just like little influences of like stuff that I can talk about, you know. And that's just a way to, you know, when you're in a place mentally where you want to find an exit to your problems or to your reality, and you create this world. You know, I don't want to use the metaphor of Lord of the Rings, but you know, you create a whole world, and this is my world. Especially in the older days when I was really into the medical stuff, it was just a way for me to just, you know, just create an alternative reality in my basement, and you know, yeah. And I'm happy I can share this with you and the listeners.
Oh yeah, yeah. Thank you so much. And you know, we're taking our last stop here. You know, we went from the surgeon's hand, guiding that, to the glory to the blade, which is one of your, I believe it's the first single from No Cure. And I'll say, like, just the artwork here, it's very, it seems like the other side of the coin of like Brodequin artwork, where that's like medieval torture. Here's like medieval healing.
I love that band.
And
I love that band. Yeah.
It's funny though. It's like you mentioned like the like Quakers sort of ways of you know, like healing people. It's like, you know, bloodletting, which is not a a safe practice, you know, considered nowadays. It's like that's its own form of torture.
Exactly.
And yeah, let's go ahead and listen to the single "Glory to the Blade," and we'll be right back. Alright, we're back from Glory to the Blade, and it was glorious. What a great fucking song. Right from the intro, you can hear how much the production evolved and how full it sounds. Like, you got the harmonies, you know, the higher one up in the right channel, and then the lower one in the left channel, and it just makes such a great full sound. And the, you know, the whole band's not even in there yet, and then you get to the bass introduction, the drums in there, and such a like stonerish groove where usually you'll hear like a polka beat and that'll be like your fun little groove part in a Gore grind song, but here it's like slowed down even more to like a halftime groove, and it's just so effective. And when you get to this main riff that we exited out on, there's two parts to it, and you can hear like the chugging along, and then it goes into these notes from an A section to a B section, where it'll start with the chug, A section, chug, B section, and it just shows how much, not only how you evolve in production, but just guitar playing too. Like, you're growing, man, and it's I can't wait to see where else this goes, because this album's so fucking good, man. And those vocals are deeper here
thanks,
too.
Man. Yeah. I mean, let me talk. So I'll talk a little bit about this song. So this song was initially called "Glory to Gore," and it started off with a pretty long sample, because this was I had planned for this to be the album opener, and so this gets a little bit weird. So bear with me. So the opening sample was going to be some Orthodox Christian Orthodox chants from Serbia. That I found one day on what I was doom scrolling on Instagram, and it's like a very haunting chant with like a choir of children that sing like a religious song about the apocalypse or something, or the second coming. And it sounded very haunting, but then I decided to scrap it because it was a little bit too religious for me, and I'm not a very religious person, but I thought it added to the atmosphere of this record. But and I scrapped it, unfortunately. Also, this song at the end, so the song ends, and then there's like the guitars ring out. Now you're gonna laugh, because there was another part of that song that I scrapped that comes in, and it's like a fucking jam session from the Grateful Dead that I decided to take away. And this was just my attempt of making this a very ridiculous album, but I had to just scrap a lot, just not to make it too ridiculous. So I don't know, maybe one day I'll show you the original Glory to Gore, which is a play on Glory to God, but it's Glory to Gore. And so that's kind of the track, and I decided to put it as the second track, and instead put the Sea Surgeon as a first track. But yeah, the guitar work is very Carcass oriented, but it also has, as you said, that kind of stoner Caius maybe vibe to it. And it kind of drags that, it brings that groove to the song. The verse, it's a little bit like, I don't know, maybe heavy metal. And as you said, the vocals are different, because for the whole record, I changed my vocals because of the lyrics. So I couldn't really scream the lyrics. It was too hard for me to scream and go like, and sing like that. So I actually I growled. So instead of going like, glory to the blade, I went, glory to the blade, because it's just easier.
Yeah.
And it was hard, because usually with all my Lipoma songs, I pitch shift down after I scream, and because you scream high and you bring it down low, there's this like nice effect. But if you already go low and then pitch shift, it's dangerous, because it brings it too low. But maybe it worked here, and I also didn't pitch shift, like I pitch shifted a little bit less that you could hear the lyrics. And this was just an attempt of making these songs maybe more radio friendly. No, I'm joking. Just more like, for people to be able to sing along to some of the chorus. Like the chorus is, glory to the blade, the edge where pain resides, just a way for exploring that, like a catchy chorus. Instead of just screaming without any structure or anything. So yeah, I'm happy you like it. It's a track that was going to be the first track, ended up being the second track. And the other track I released as a single before is Flesh of the Damned, which follows a little bit of a similar thing. It's a little bit more punk oriented. Someone who reviewed this compared it to Beat the Bastards by Exploited, which is a kind of metallic punk anthem. And I love that song, so that was a compliment to me, even though he probably meant it as a diss. But I love the Exploited. You know, I listened to the Exploited when I was young, and I still love that band. And yeah, so there you go. You know, that's it. I'm looking forward to what everybody thinks of this full length. And yeah.
Yeah, man, such a great job, and I'm glad that we're able to go from the beginning and even hear some renditions of other songs, how they were before, and the final product, and then going into this latest release and just hearing that evolution. Because man, you're growing, and I'm glad that you're gonna be going into different avenues with playing live once the drummer comes along. It's gonna be great, and I'm sure everyone's gonna love this record because I love the hell out of it. It's such a like great like statement for what Lipoma is with listening to the discography. It's like to hear where it's at now. It's like, damn, we went through a journey with you.
I'm happy, man. I really enjoyed this this podcast, this interview. I wish we could talk more about other songs. I don't want to sound like, oh, this guy wants to talk about a song, but as I said, behind every song, like I can, there's something behind the song because, as I said before, like Lipoma, even though it's just a hobby and it's it does feel like my baby, and every song I put something of myself into every song,
Yeah.
So it's great that I have the opportunity to talk about my art, and thank you again for inviting me, man. This has been great. We've been talking for the past 3 hours, and yeah, and it's great. I hope the listeners they enjoy this journey
Yeah.
we were on.
Yeah, and I'll just one final note that just came to mind. It's funny that you have this like Greek origin, and that's where a lot of like the medical stuff like came from, like the Hippocratic Oath and all this sort of
Yeah.
stuff. Like it's like even some of these words they like derive from like Latin, which is close to Greek, from my understanding, and like it's just full circle. It's almost like you're like meant to do this.
Yeah, I don't know if I ever said this in another interview, but I studied medicine for a year, and I dropped out. But I wanted to become a psychiatrist when I was young. I ended up becoming a different kind of doctor. I got a PhD, and now I'm teaching. But I was always fascinated by medicine, and by the fact that whatever happens, if you're happy, if you're sad, no matter your race, your gender, your class, you will get sick and you will die. And that might be a sad reality, but it's also something comforting about where we're all from and where we're all heading, and that we're all just pieces of flesh. And glory to the blade, because that's maybe not the plastic surgeon blade that all the people today are using, but it's we hope that medicine will save us. To a certain extent, medicine does provide us with some comfort and some cures, but the inevitability of disease and death and suffering is part of life. And the more we come to terms with that, with our mortality and how fragile existence is, the more we will be, I guess, just ready for the inevitable end.
Well said. You got any shout outs, and let people know where to find you, where to support where to support Lipoma, and pick up a record?
I would like to shout out all the fans, first and foremost, who have made this project, this band, what it is, who have been listening to it, streaming it, sharing it, buying the stuff, the merch. I'm grateful for all of them, and I'm very happy that this music has touched you. I would like to thank Ryan from Gurgling Gore and Taylor from Scumlord Distro, and also Doug from Grand Vomit Productions, who have all released my full lengths on CDs, on cassette tapes, and on vinyl. I understand that in this economy, vinyl and all sorts of merch is a big undertaking. And I would like to also thank some of my friends, mothers, if you're listening, who has given me a lot of musical direction. Taylor, Shrank, He's also helped me with a lot of musical direction, family, stuff like that. And yeah, if you want to contact me, the best thing to do is probably through Instagram. Send me a DM, or you can send me an email, lipomagore@gmail.com, and you can buy my stuff. On the 13th of June, everything goes live on Lipoma Gore at bigcartel.com. You can buy the CD, the vinyl, the cassette. I'm going to have to upload that and make sure you get that. I do want to say my apologies to all the international fans. The USPS, unfortunately, they charge so much for international shipping, and it makes me so sad because there's a lot of fans outside of America that want to buy Lipoma, but the shipping is ridiculous. Like the shipping is like $30 to ship a CD to like France or something. So this is not my fault, but apologies, and thanks again to everybody. And yeah, looking forward to putting all the merch online, and whoever can purchase it, that'd be it. Otherwise, you can always stream it on Spotify. And last thing I want to say is I'm a firm supporter of piracy. If you can find my stuff online and just download it, you can check out Metal Tracker. It's you can if you're into torrents and stuff like that. Feel free to upload all my stuff and download it. I don't give a fuck as long as you enjoy it. Peace.
Awesome. Thanks, Max.